Welcome to Fear Coded, a podcast where we talk about media from the horror genre and take a queer reading of a single book, video game, film, podcast, or TV show to explore just how queer horror can be. This time we're starting Queer as Folk Horror, a month-long dive into the subgenre folk horror in all its glory. Gather around the maypole, everyone, and enjoy the specially made meat pie I put my heart and soul, wink, into. Because today, we're discussing 2019's Midsommar, which was written and directed by Ari Aster. I'm Tyler.
Schmurgen, I'm David.
Okay, Swedish chef, I'm Marilee.
And before one of us transgresses to the point of being subject to a blood eagle, I want to check in and say hello with my co-hosts on how things are going for them. In a landscape of horrors that our real world has to offer, what's making y'all scared or what's making you feel prepared?
Well, I'll start because potentially this is going to affect the recording quality. I'm feeling a little scared because I am babysitting this weekend, so my sister and her husband can have a away trip, just
Aww.
them. And because of that, I have not been staying at my house. And my two cats are like, hey, I haven't seen you in 24 hours.
No.
And they are desperately trying to break into the office, which they are not allowed into. So if you hear desperately sad meows and a banging noise, I'm so sorry. It's simply what it's got to be. My brother, who I live with, has traded over, so he's watching the kids right now, so I could be here to record this podcast. So there is no one to distract the cats. They're just going to be screaming. I'm very, very, very sorry.
Marilee, because your cats are well-known terrorists, have you developed a type of inoculation to the mewing, or is the mewing itself a torture for you?
I feel really bad because the one who's desperately trying to get into the office, his name is Pirate. And he is a little sweetheart. He desperately just wants to come in here and hang out. The problem with Pirate is that he will jump up onto the built-in bookshelves and then will not be able to jump down. And I will have to stop the recording and go and deal with that. He'll also try and rub up against the microphone. It'll be a whole thing. His brother Cowboy is also not allowed to the recording space because he likes to eat wires and he simply can't be around my computer. So I feel a little bad because Pirate is just I want to come hang out, but he
just
can't
wants
be
love.
here
Yeah,
during
he
the
just
recording.
wants love. He can't. For one thing, maybe his brother is the terrorist, and so I shouldn't paint both cats with one brush.
Sometimes we're pretty sure that Pirate has chewed a cord and gotten away with it because everybody thinks that it was Cowboy. So I cannot say that he is innocent in the cord chewing. He's just much more subtle about it.
Brothers of horror, truly and honestly, I will not allow it. But I do, you know what? I feel that because I think that there is a natural inclination for anyone who is a pet owner to want to care for your pet during its time of need. And they just want to be near you. Yeah. Marilee, it's what we all want. It's why we started the podcast. So I get it, boys.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, David? Are you feeling scared or prepared today?
This week, I feel prepared. It's a rare preparedness for me. Some of it, I talked a little bit about this the last couple weeks, but the weather's changing, ergo my mood is changing. It's shorts weather again, and that's delightful. I am prepared.
People, huh?
I do. Well, only because we live here, Marilee. Only because we live here, and I like to be a rebel because people here they don't dress for the weather. Mm-hmm. They dress for the season. Mm-hmm. So they will not change into summer clothes until the summer equinox. They're oh my God, they're a cult. I live in the Midsommar. Save me.
Well,
just kidding.
You are in Europe, and as we will come to talk about, a lot of these folk horror stories originate in Europe, so it kind of makes sense.
Kind of makes sense.
They should have had Netflix. They wouldn't have developed all those legends. But I'm not feeling prepared because of shorts. I'm feeling prepared because with warmer weather, our expat meetup group is going back to the outdoor location, which is fantastic because the indoor location, which we have been at all winter long, it's just too dang loud. It is too dang loud. I don't know how often I've spoken about this, but the group is a little older, so then when it gets loud, people speak louder to be able to hear each other, because maybe some hearing loss has occurred. And every time I go to the winter meetup, my watch tells me that I am in a loud decibel environment and need to flee for my own oral safety. And then I look antisocial, which I think everyone who listens to the podcast already thinks that I am. But now we're going to the outdoor location. We'll be back on a nice green space. It gets a little dusty when it hasn't rained in a while, but otherwise it is delightful. And even though people will be loud, we won't be in a cacophonous space where the noise just travels around. So I'm feeling prepared about my hope for the future, where I will not be deafened on Thursdays that I go out with the group.
I love that for you.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
I truly am excited.
Tyler, do you get overstimulated in loud spaces? Because I'm like David in that if it's too loud, I simply can't handle it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a mess. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Much like David, I'm probably also known for being an antisocial person. I don't like going to loud spaces. Bars get me uncomfy after too long. Like, it doesn't go well. However, if I'm in my car and my loud noise alert comes up on my watch, I'm just like, yes, I'm doing the right thing because I'm listening to music very, very loudly right now.
Wow. This is being with the expat group is the only time this thing has come off. Outside of like when I used to go to the theater and there was a standing ovation. That was the only other time that it would be like, it's too loud. And I'm like, yeah, it's too loud. Oh, fucking Alphaba killed it. Let's go. Tyler, you say that people know you to be antisocial, but I have to remind you, in this Scared and Prepared segment, that is a lie, because you were saying things like, oh, I'm going to medieval times. I'm hanging out with my friends for Christmas. You have been very social on this podcast. So what's the truth, Tyler?
Okay,
what's
but
the
listen,
truth?
David, if you're bringing that up, I would like to remind the listeners that you are the one who's constantly talking about like how you're going to do this thing with your friends or this thing. You have a weekly meetup on Thursdays.
Yeah,
I never see anybody. So like, I think that by definition, I am the antisocial person on this podcast. Wild.
Well, that I will not deny, Marilee, but here's what I will say is that the source of Tyler's socialization have been in his prepared category and the source of mine have not. So that's what I was getting at. We may be social, but I despise it. Tyler, is the nature of your Scared and Prepared socially oriented this week?
No, in fact, it's very like stay home, wrapped up in blankets, because I am digging into the Criterion Collection.
Wow.
So I am feeling prepared this week because I have a streaming service that may be the only morally good streaming service in existence anymore that isn't trying to eat up my wallet. And it's because there is a slew of wonderful movies in the Criterion Collection constantly streaming on their channel. I got it as a Christmas present, a subscription. And I love it. I'm getting to watch all these movies that I haven't gotten to watch. When David Lynch passed away, I went in and watched all of the David Lynch movies that are on that channel. It's just been really nice. And then they also have, which I think every fucking streaming service should start doing, a actual like quote channel that just live streams all of their stuff. So if you're ever like, I don't know what to put on, you could just put on that channel, and then it's like, boom, there's a great movie that's on streaming for you.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Have you stumbled across any faves since you've started this sort of Criterion watch through?
I will tell you one movie that I watched that wasn't a fave, and I had to turn it off because I wasn't in the right headspace for it.
Okay.
It was Run Lola Run.
Oh, okay. All right.
I've always thought Run Lola Run was kind of like a
I don't know that
like
I know this movie. Would you mind like give me a taste of like what the plot is? Or
yeah, this so it's set in Germany, so everyone's speaking German in like the mid to late 90s, I think. And basically this woman has to find a bunch of money for her boyfriend because her boyfriend lost like this bag that was like this huge bundle of drug money, and he's gonna get killed if she doesn't find like that much money to like pay off the drug people. And then it's just kind of like this whole cycle of like the same events happening over and over, but it plays on like predestination and do we have free will? And there's like animation that's also thrown in. There's a lot of like different cuts. It's a very like experimental sort of movie. And I was not in the right headspace for that movie when I tried to watch it. And I was like, I just can't do this. I'm going to have a freak out if I watch this. Because it was just, there's so much going on so frequently. And I'm like, I can't handle this right now. There's too much. What do you mean predestination? What do you mean my life could change? Like chaos theory, butterfly flaps its wings. Blah, I couldn't do it. So that was really kind of like
trippy. Yeah, it's a little trippy, merrily. And there's an element of, at least Lola, maybe some other characters as well, sort of understanding that they're in a surreal environment that makes it feel even worse for surreality, truly. Not worse, like a pejorative, like just more, I guess more, just like severe of an experience. But I think the first 5 minutes you're kind of like, oh, am I watching like a baby crime thing and cute? And then it is not cute. It is a different vibe. I loved Run Lola Run when I rented it from Blockbuster on VHS. So I know Tyler will love it. Just maybe when you've had some rest and it's a good mental health day.
Yes, exactly.
Fair enough.
Speaking of
Merrily,
needing a good mental health day.
Yeah.
Well, but Merrily, I think you would enjoy Run Lola Run too. Truly and honestly, based on your vibes. And it's a little bit of a Rashomon. It's not quite Rashomon-ish, but I know that you love that from the conversation that you had with Derek on Gimmicks. So
I do. I love a Rashomon.
Then I think you'd enjoy Run Lola Run, but you do need a stable day. I think a stable day.
Good. I will watch it in 4 years, probably.
4 years. Wow, so specific.
We'll see. Could be later.
Could be later.
Well, we're not 4 years ahead. Today, actually, we are in the present. We are in the moment. The sun is shining upon us. May it never set, because today we are talking about the film Midsommar, written and directed by Ari Aster. It's his sophomore film, and while there is some controversy about the plot and the violence in this film when it first came out, it was universally praised for its direction and the star-making performance of one Miss Florence Pugh, gorgeous, as the protagonist, Danny.
She has such a great crying face. Like, she went to the Claire Danes School of Crying.
For sure.
Midsommar follows Danny as she joins her boyfriend Christian and his friends, Mark, Josh, and Pele, as they go to observe Pele's community Midsommar celebration, all while she deals with the emotional fallout from a family tragedy.
But as the festival gets going, it's not at all what they expected it to be. As the bodies start to drop, it's a tense ride to see who will survive long enough to escape, or if they'll even want to. What are you guys' relationship with Midsommar? David, I think this was your first time watching the movie, so how about we start with you?
It was my first time. I was only vaguely aware that this movie existed. And I believe whenever I would see it on a streaming service, it's this image of Florence Pugh crying in a bunch of flowers. And I thought, why on earth would I click on that? Just truly, what would compel me? Why would I do that? I am familiar with the screen cap meme of her screaming with a bunch of other folks from the village. And always interpreted that somewhat differently than it actually is in the film, but that now provides me some social context. I am not new to the world of Scandinavia. I think that video games in particular, like, I don't know, a bunch of game designers went to like a Viking festival and was like, fuck yeah, we're putting Vikings in everything. Because for a little while, I could not boot up my PS5 and not learn about Norse mythology. And so, because I've got a little bit of that, and because we got a chance to go to Norway, I am familiar with some of the concepts and conceits that went into creating the Hårga and the sort of setting for this film, but I had no context of the film itself. This film was recently referenced on one of my favorite video game podcasts when they talked about Vikings in video games. And I was like, oh, I think we're covering that for the podcast. And it was vis-a-vis about the Blood Eagle. And wow, what a treat, what a dream. and my 2 weeks notice has been turned in for the podcast. So really, really glad that we could watch this one.
Oh boy.
Sorry, David, you're stuck.
Okay, well then, if I'm stuck, Marilee, what was your experience with this film?
Well, I actually saw it in theaters when it first came out.
Really?
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, for real. My sister and brother both love Hereditary. It's one of their favorite movies of all time. I'm on the record of being like, I don't want to watch that. That seems like it's gonna forever scar my psyche, and I simply don't want to do it. I will though.
Was
I
that
will if you guys
was
want
that
me to.
Was that his first film?
Yes.
Ari Aster's first film? Okay.
So
we'll have to cover Heredity at one point of time, Marilee, because it is the nexus of all the podcasts that I'm on. In that it is about a mother, it is horror, and Derek loves Toni Collette. So I think that at one point of time, it will all come together.
No, I understand, and I know that there's a really fascinating trans narrative that you can interpret the film with.
I think
they didn't know about that.
I think based on nonverbal cues, none of us have seen this film.
I must have blocked out so much of Hereditary because Jesus Christ, what a movie.
Yeah,
that's
the thing. Okay. That's the thing. I heard about some stuff that happens in it, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna sit this one out, folks.
Hey.
But so my sister and brother both absolutely go bonkers for Hereditary, and so when Midsommar was coming out, they wanted to go in theaters. I thought that this one looked good. It didn't seem like it was gonna eat me alive mentally, so I was just like, all right, sure. I watched it in theaters. I was like, damn, that was definitely a movie. And then proceeded. I enjoyed it. I strangely enough hadn't seen it since watching it in theaters. But I liked it. I liked the movie. No breakups in my theater, though. I know that was a thing that happened sometimes.
Thank God.
Well, hey, being broken up with would be the best case scenario. I think that if you were having a rocky relationship, things far worse could have happened.
Yeah, did you guys hear about this? It was a thing that anecdotally apparently happened. There were some people on Tumblr who talked about when they went and saw it in theaters. Sometimes couples went to go and see it, and people had reactions based around the end of the film, and some people apparently had fights and broke up in the lobby of the theater.
Well, when we get to the end of the film, maybe we'll discover if our relationship is strong enough to maintain our takes at the end of the film.
Oh,
I'm
boy.
so nervous. Tyler, what about you?
Well, I remember wanting to see this movie when it came out, but just because life happens, and I, just didn't. So I ended up renting it from Redbox instead, and I watched it.
Wow.
I watched it on my little TV that I had in my bedroom at the time, and just thinking, boy, a movie has just happened. Like David, I also have knowledge about Norse culture, the Vikings, from grad school, and then I also just am kind of interested in that culture, and what people think about it isn't exactly what it was like in reality. So and then I focused a lot on medieval literature as part of my grad school experience.
Yeah, you were a medievalist.
Yeah.
You have a degree in that, right?
Yeah, so I have a master's degree in English literature, and I really focused on medieval literature. We did not really touch on Norse literature at that time, although I have read a little bit of some sagas. They're not really great examples of what Norse mythology was like, because they were written after the Norse were Christianized, so it's not a one-to-one, which is kind of why folk horror movies like this are so interesting, because it's kind of diving into a piece of culture that people aren't super familiar with, even if it gets Hollywoodized in the process. But yeah, I will do my best to, along with David, help make sense of what's real versus what's been made up or played up. So yeah.
Tyler, you keep saying like David, but I just wanted to remind everyone that my experience with the Norse of all of this, outside of a vacation, was Kratos killing the Norse gods. I need to tone down the expectations on my knowledge in this area just a little bit.
Okay, fine, fair enough. I've got.
I
will bring out my Saga of the Icelanders and shit that I have up on my bookcase.
Yeah.
Oh hell yeah! Just to make all of our base setting knowledge clear, I was never really into the Vikings. They were never my jam, so I never really was interested in a lot of media having to do with Vikings. Though I do have a little bit of interest in like medieval Europe, like that kind of thing. So I'm a little bit more familiar with that area as well. But yeah, that's just all. The Vikings were never for me. They were certainly guys.
They sure were. Well, let's talk about some of these beliefs and misconceptions and just how Viking-y are the people of Hårga when it comes to our themes. So today we want to talk about some stuff to keep in mind, some themes that we'll cover. So yeah, let's get started. Our first theme would be Give Me That Old-Time Religion. Different religions, particularly ones that are at least superficially pagan in nature, are everywhere in the genre of folk horror, which, as a reminder, we are talking about all month long. Though we aren't giving any information on how long the Hårga have been around, they are, at the very least, trying to appear like they're from an older time. Is it too on the nose that the scumbag boyfriend is named Christian, or is it something else? Our next
I will say,
yeah,
I did read some interviews that the folks who were credited with it's in the credits of coming up with the belief system of the Hårga, which is sort of a amalgamation of a lot of things. They drew a ton from Christianity to create the Hårga and their belief system. So I think it is interesting when you see these parallels drawn to Christian and maybe the idea of Christianity, because I think a lot more of that comes from the Hårga themselves and this sort of pagan layer that's put over it than Christian, the character, who I think, and I will discuss, is a little bit more animalistic and primal himself.
I'm really interested to hear about that.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so our next theme to kind of keep in mind is Mommy Nature Dearest.
I had a lot of fun with these theme titles. I think you could tell.
Thank you for this,
Marilee.
Marilee.
I think missed opportunity not to say "Step on me, Mommy Nature," but here we are.
Well, this is it's how you can, for the listeners at home, you can tell who wrote the notes for this episode because there will be ridiculous puns with Marilee and ridiculous kind of sexual puns from David. And then from me, it's just a shotgun blast. You're probably going to get both. You might get neither. Who the fuck knows? But anyway, yes, we are talking about Mommy Dearest, this time mommy being nature. Not everything green is good, and sometimes things that are natural are downright horrific, like Lyme disease, which the characters in the film are very anxious about. The idea of living in rhythm with the world around you sounds nice, right? Less so when it means a guaranteed brutal death at 72, if you avoid being ritually sacrificed before then, of course. Let's not also forget that this is set during the midnight sun time period in Sweden, and
Freaky.
The fact that the sun is out all the time is extremely disorienting for everybody involved. We're not really sure what day it is, and that is very much part and parcel with like how cults will induct people and try and make them really submissive, is fucking around with time and not having a good concrete idea of what the fuck is going on and when are things happening.
I loved the sun of all this. When we went to Iceland, we got 3 hours of darkness a day, which is nowhere close to the midnight sun, but it was unnerving for the sun to just always be out. I would rather experience darkness more frequently than light, and having 21 hours of light, like, it was just very, very odd.
Yeah, very disorienting. And I think that that's part of the reason why the aesthetics of this film are so memorable. It's because like most of the time in the horror genre, things are like steeped in that darkness, but here that light like covers everything. And I think that it's very enjoyable aesthetically.
I think so too, but that's part of like what makes it like unnerving is like, here's all the beauty around us in beautiful summertime Sweden, and yet there's so much brutality.
Well, that's kind of like why I love the Lyme disease and the ticks that they talk about a lot in the beginning, because like they have like this beautiful like frolicking around, and then they start talking about ticks, these tiny little parasites that live in the grass and hide and make it so that this inviting field is not quite as safe as you might think.
Oh, that's a wonderful parallel. I didn't really put that together.
I just think it's neat.
That's so cool, Marilee. Well, following up on this idea that there are tiny little things infecting our bloodstream and making us do crazy stuff, maybe it's magic, probably it's drugs. So, this theme focuses on things like the devil, love spells, and psychic intuition, which are all directly mentioned throughout the story of Midsommar. And our protagonist, Danny, experiences some pretty strange things, like spontaneously speaking Swedish, kinda, sorta.
Maybe.
But are any of those things real? Do the spells really work, or is it the steady stream of hallucinogens that the cast take during the festival taking their toll? God, there's so much drugs in this movie.
There's
It's crazy.
so many drugs. Like, if you take a shot every time somebody like has like a drug of some kind, like including the vape pen that like Mark is constantly like taking hits from, you would be blackout by the end of the film. I swear to God.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I go ahead, David.
I was a little bit more willing to believe in the mystical of all of this. I do obviously recognize and see the substance use that's happening here, but even, I mean, the sorts of hallucinogens that they're using wouldn't create some of the impacts that we see in the film. And so I do think that towards the end in particular, we were talking about some things that just weren't possible through the misuse of substances, even if we were to take ourselves at Danny's POV.
Mhm.
It was just a bridge too far. And so I am very excited to be talking about this because I think that there is some, if not mysticism, then some pretty incredible communalism that we get exposed to here that is acting at a level that you just wouldn't see even in high functioning cults.
I am
Right.
obsessed with this take. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's honestly like such a great idea, and it leads into us discussing what is folk horror. Because,
Mhm.
Marilee, I think these are three really awesome themes to pick out because I think these are recurring themes in a lot of folk horror movies, TV shows, stories in general. Just to kind of give like a brief background for everybody, because folk horror isn't as popular as like slashers, for instance. This is a genre that's typically linked to British and European folklore. It's often representing mysterious and shocking things that don't make any sense to us coming from our Western, Christianized, modern 21st century belief system. How can people have such brutal beliefs in modern, quote, Christian times? It's this sense of secrecy that these communities have. Nature is being depicted as beautiful but brutal. And that secrecy is what helps people protect their way of life and that practice and that worship of nature. If you transgress against their ancient beliefs, then it's the blood eagle for you. A really popular movie in this genre is The Wicker Man, which we will be talking about later this month. Not the Nicolas Cage version, don't worry, folks. But yeah, it's like a really common, like all three of these themes are really common in a lot of folk horror, and we're going to be coming back to this well quite a bit this month. But yeah, just to kind of give everyone like a brief rundown, and like some stuff to look forward to as well, not just for this episode, but for the rest of March.
Yeah. I obviously the newest to horror was the one grappling the most with the conceit of this sort of theme month that we're in. And now that I have enjoyed this entry and done a little bit of homework for our next one, I'm starting to get the vibe of folk horror. And I think by the end of March, I will totally understand and be ready for my final exam.
Awesome.
Yes, because we are, of course,
Folk horror.
creating a test. I hope
Great.
that everybody has been studying, because there's gonna be a exam talking about the themes for our first 3 months. You will all have to take it.
Wow, if that sent a chill up your spine, you might think that listening to this podcast was horror. But my question for my two co-hosts is the film Midsommar horror? Were you scared while watching this film?
I say man is the real horror.
Oh my god.
You're right.
Yeah.
Always correct.
Period.
In like
End
a
of sentence.
dangerous
I'm done
game.
with the rest of the
You're
podcast.
just
Good luck,
done.
everybody.
You're just yeah. Okay, great. Man is the true horror.
Yeah, no,
And
I
now-
think it definitely counts. I think that like the imagery is so extreme and shocking. I would hesitate to put this anywhere else other than the horror genre. You know what I mean? Even though if I personally wasn't that scared of any particular moment in the film, the content and imagery simply cannot exist anywhere else.
I think it's also horrific too because the culture that we're experiencing is both very familiar and very alien to us. And so we do not understand the practices that the Hårga, practice. And so when we can't understand, we don't really have any data to support, arguments like how do we confront them? It makes us feel scared because we're underpowered.
I have to imagine that someone has cut together a trailer from this film that makes this look like a rom-com. I truly just must imagine that exists for this film. And the reason that I say that is because I think in the end, if you trace Danny's story but remove a couple of the elements of it, we are actually talking about someone who finds home and community where they had none. And that's a very sweet and happy story. So in a lot of ways, I viewed this a little bit more as a Bildungsroman and a little bit less like a terrifying experience. And you know that I love a creature effect. So I was just happy every time somebody was getting bludgeoned to death or something. Like, that was a good time. And so I actually had a lot of fun with this. And I was never scared during it. I kept wanting, no, maybe I don't want to be scared. I kept waiting to be scared. I was anticipatory for fear, and the fear never came. Instead, I got these like really cute death sequences, and that was fun for me. And also, my girl Danny got what she needed in the end, and yay, Danny.
Oh no.
Okay, so we're gonna add a theme, an area on our theme test about identifying cults. Got it.
David, I'm now worried that you are susceptible to a cult.
It's interesting because, of course, I've studied cults and cult behavior, and I'm not sure that the Hårga qualify because of how the French studies on cults has defined cults, and that's because it's insular, it's part of community. There's a couple other things that are part of it, but we can get into that when we start talking the Hårga in depth.
Great, I love that.
Awesome.
Being scary, however, is simply not enough for us to talk about it on this particular podcast. So this movie, there's a lot of stuff happening in it. And we gotta ask, how can we possibly discuss this movie that's pretty focused on some presumably heterosexual couples in the concepts of queer theory? Is this movie queer?
I think there's plenty of fertile queer soil that has been blessed by our May Queen that has produced ripe and delicious fruit for us to talk through. I think the Hårga themselves are very queer because they dismiss traditional family structure. I think that they view the idea of pregnancy and creating life very much outside of heteronormative union. I think indeed, because it is an insular community, the idea of heterosexual union is frowned upon because it creates sort of inbred children. I think that there's a lot of queerness here for the Hårga. I think I was desperate to get to this little community because in Act 1 of this film, it's heterosexuality everywhere and it's just overflowing, and I did not like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, David. I think the Hårga cult or the community doesn't believe in a traditional family structure, which in itself is pretty queer. It specifically mentioned that all the babies are raised by the village. So truly it does take a village in this case. But this massive emphasis that's put on reproduction kind of makes me wonder, like, how would actual queer people, like sexually queer people, fare in Hårga? Because I'm kind of concerned, like, probably not that well. A lot of this movie works on the illusion that the Hårga are like flower crowns and kind of like a bohemian lifestyle, and like, yes, sexuality, free love and all that stuff, but it's also so heavily dependent on like what can you do for the community, like in terms of like your physical self, that it makes me think, like, are queer gay people gonna be okay if they go here? Like, they're not gonna want to participate, like, in terms of like sexual desire in things like what Christian goes to at the end of the movie. and so there would be like social pressure, or maybe something happens to queer people. We just don't know. There's a lot that we are presented about the Hårga that seems kind of like, good for Danny. She's being included as part of a community, but there's so much that's hidden and secretive that makes me feel unsafe if I were in that sort of environment.
Well, we will discuss this later. It's like a constant conversation around this movie, if this counts as like a good for her film. And like, on the one hand, it absolutely can be, but on the other hand, the thing about the Hårga to me is that, like, I've always viewed them as way, way, way more conservative than they are trying to portray themselves as. So, I just don't know. Again, I worry about any queer or trans people that would be, like, joining the Hårga or born there or anything.
Yeah, and my interpretation of this is that there are queer people in the Hårga. I think that the idea that they would have to come from the outside actually speaks to the antagonists in this film. And I think that watching this film, it is easier to fall into the role of one of those antagonists than to do the job of an anthropologist correctly, which is what I think we're asked to do as film goers here. And I think that it'll make our conversation very exciting. Are either of you, like, are you familiar with some of the concepts of anthropology? Because that is a big part of this movie.
I've watched a lot of Bones. Does that count?
It does count,
I watched a lot of Indiana Jones. Does that count?
No.
It counts less.
It counts less.
It counts less.
I would rather you had away.
I would rather you had watched Bones, truly and honestly. That girl works at the Smithsonian, Tyler.
Dr. Jones works for the college. I don't know.
That man's a grave robber.
Grave robber. Save it for next week, Marilee. The idea of anthropology is the study of cultures that surround the notion of enduring symbols. And the symbols can come from almost anywhere. They can be written down, they can be passed on orally, they can be represented by food. It's just sort of the idea that there's a symbol that ties us together as a community, and it is the study of the community and that symbol throughout a historical period of time. Some of the main characters in this film are anthropological doctoral students, e.g., the worst people in the world. And their lack of humility in approaching this tribe will be their downfall. And I think that I think a lot of contemporary reviews of this film that I read on Reddit were written like they were written from Josh's POV. And like, yeah, you're a shitty anthropologist. Of course, this is going to be your take on it. But I think that, like, when it comes to queer theory of all of this, I think that the very nature of what we know and express as queerness would look so different for people who live in the Hårga. And my one point of reference that they would be a chill community to be queer in is that they were watching Austin Powers. That's all I really have going for me, but it's textual and I'm going to take it.
Well, I mean, there's also, when they first get to the village, they talk to the elder and he talks about, like, the hermaphroditic nature of nature, and like he's wearing the robe and he calls it very girly, and like talks about this one Viking thing that I don't really follow, but like I can kind of see it, but I also worry about trans people in that community.
I think it's actually kind of an interesting point that you mentioned trans people in that case, because I've been thinking about this movie a lot as a reproductive core to it. And I think we shouldn't skip over the priest saying that it looks kind of girly to be wearing what he's wearing, because that does kind of play on gender a bit. And I think David is right too, that, and I have to keep this in mind as well, because this is something that I really like about studying history, is that we have to treat these people as like a foreign country. It's not that
they literally are. They're
not
in Sweden.
Yeah, of course that, but also like the community of Hårga itself. We must treat it as like a foreign country, because these are people with their own practices and own beliefs and their own ideas about what is what. How do we define gender? Maybe a part of that, and there is a seedling of that in that conversation that the priest has. It does not make me more sympathetic to the Hårga or make me feel safer, but it does make me think, like, it's so fascinating because we can't be good cultural anthropologists because we only have this small snapshot of the community. It's why when you read about, like, people that have studied, these tribes, many of the best anthropological studies are done year over year over year, maybe even studying like a generation. And we only have 2.5 hours to get to know these people, technically less.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't know what their winters are like, although we know that they have some sort of feast holiday during then. We don't know what spring and autumn are like. We don't know what, like, marriage is clearly not part of it, but are there other types of unions that happen? What are all these people doing the rest of the year? Because it doesn't look like people live here. Well, I mean, people might live there all year long. That's the thing, is we just don't know. And so I think if we were to treat the Hårga as like a real tribe or a real organization or a real people, I would say, like, we can't make a judgment based off of what we see just in this movie. However, I think what we see of this movie is enough to give pause to the idea that Americans and just people that are, like, from the West or imperialist descent should not be going to places trying to apply their own belief system onto that culture, because then that culture that they are, like, applying things to, applying thoughts to, will bite back. And I think that's part of what makes folk horror so fun and interesting, because that is a very consistent theme throughout every single piece of media related to folk horror.
I love that. That's such a really great conversation. I am very into that. However, I think that if I don't know if this is the time to talk about it, but, like, if we are talking about the potentially conservative nature of the Hårga, I feel like now is the only time to talk about it.
Yeah.
How much are you aware of the potentially right-wing racist nature of, like, the Hårga?
I don't know really anything about that, although I have heard of it.
Yeah, so, like, I'm also not an expert. I'm very white, but I there have been a lot of takes where people talk about the fact that, like, isn't it interesting that the 3 people of color that are brought to the Hårga are all killed, and the 2 white men are used for potential breeding, and Danny, the young white woman, is kept as part of the cult. Moreover, this is the only thing I know about the director's cut, so forgive me. We didn't really talk about that, but and I haven't seen it, obviously. But apparently in the director's cut, when they first are arriving in Sweden, there is a scene, like, while they're in the car, they see, like, this giant banner that is for a far right party in, like, the Swedish government, like, that are basically Nazis. And, like, it was cut from the film, so I don't know how much you want to, like, take this thing that was not in the text that we saw, and, like, actually apply meaning to it. But that is another thing to consider while we're talking about it. And I think that anything that the filmmaker is trying to align with Nazis, I don't think is great for queer people.
Yeah, well, that was obviously not in the film that I watched, so I can't.
Yeah, so, like, that's the thing.
Is,
it's like, do we talk, like, how much credence do you want to, like, put on that? I don't know. I didn't put it in the notes because I didn't know how appropriate it was, but we're talking about them, so I felt like maybe we should talk about it.
I mean, I don't think we have to talk about that because it's just not part of the text.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I do think that there's enough material that you could pull from within the film that we saw to still justify, like, the Hårga definitely have some sort of white supremacist vibe. I mean, the Hårga people are all white. I mean, it is set in Sweden, but still, like, I think it is kind of, like, curious that the people of color that we see end up being used in some way. Like, Josh, we see he's kind of used as fertilizer. Simon, we see he's being used as, I don't know, coverage for the chickens in the chicken coop. Connie ends up being just like in a bag of mulch basically as she's wheeled to the Yellow Temple at the end of the movie. But I mean, Mark also gets, spoilers for what we end up discussing about skinned alive. So, I mean, but he also transgressed against the people. So and is part of the ritual itself as a result. So, I don't know. I think I think there's definitely something to say about race in this movie. I personally don't feel comfortable enough like postulating that though, just because that's not like my lived experience and I'm not going to see some things that a person of color might, so I don't want to speak on that. But I do think that there is something there, and listeners, if you are familiar with like anything that people of color have talked about with this movie or written about with this movie, please be sure to send it to us, because I guarantee you we would love to read more people's thoughts on this movie, because clearly we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I think vis-a-vis the queer of it all, Danny is the one that I'm going to ascribe queer heroism to. And in the end, I think the struggle that Danny overcomes is not having anyone who understands, accepts her. And in the end, she ends up bound into a place where she is understood and accepted.
I think that's
love
fair.
that.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about so much related to this movie. Do we actually want to talk about the movie now?
Yeah, let's dive on in to the film Midsommar. The film opens with a quadriptych, a 4-panel artwork that shows the events of the film depicted in a classic Swedish illustration style before the art opens like a curtain and the story begins. Danny is frantic to reach her family after a concerning email from her sister Terry. After failing to reach them, she calls Christian, her boyfriend, for comfort, but he is distant. And later, while on the phone with another friend, Danny discusses how she's convinced that Christian is planning to break up with her. Then she gets a call from an unknown number. Elsewhere, Christian, Mark, Josh, and Pele discuss how Christian wants to break up with Danny, and he has wanted to for a while. Josh thinks Christian is using their relationship drama to keep him from thinking about his doctoral thesis. They discuss their trip to Sweden this summer when Christian sees Danny calling his phone again. This time, when he answers, Danny is screaming and crying. The scene changes to Danny's home and shows police and firefighters entering, and we see that Terry and her parents died of an intentional carbon monoxide poisoning on behalf of Terry.
I think that the reveal that her parents weren't like sleeping like we saw earlier in the film, like we assumed, but were dead the entire time is just an incredible internal reveal. I loved that part of the movie.
Yeah.
I think that like the visuals are all on point, like really setting the scene. I thought that this was a great opener.
And so dark, for a film that will not use a lot more darkness. This is the dark set piece of the film. And that is very interesting to contrast this against the environment that we'll find ourselves in for the rest of the movie, essentially.
Right, because there is like a pretty decent snowfall happening the entire time the events in this scene are happening. It's dark out. It is, as we just discussed, the polar opposite of what we'll see for the rest of the movie. I think Ari Aster does such an excellent job in every movie that he makes with establishing mood and creating really striking visual imagery. So I love that about this. I also think like watching this a second time made me realize just how Danny is so like screwed in every way, shape, and form. She has a very unhealthy social community where Christian is a shitty boyfriend. His friends aren't much better. Josh is really only focused on academics, which for a PhD student makes sense, but still like asshole behavior. Not to mention Mark is just a dick, and Pele seems like the only really decent person, but as we see in the rest of the movie, not so great. I think Danny's friends, like at least the one friend she has, like seems a bit better. But we don't hear from her for the rest of the movie, so who knows how that friendship, really is. And then poor Danny is also letting herself get gaslit by everybody constantly, which is, unfortunate, but she is also like constantly going through it herself. So, bit of a bummer start.
Like,
I don't know. Do you think Danny's being gaslit? I don't know that I ever saw that in particular. I see her not being supported by the people who she thinks of as her friends. They are not her. I don't even think this girl on the phone is her friend.
Interesting.
I think if you look at the responses that Danny is getting, they're not actually that caring. It almost is like, why is Danny calling me again? I don't know that Danny has a support system. Maybe Terry was her support system, but it doesn't seem to be her friend. It's not her boyfriend, and it's not her boyfriend's friends.
Interesting. See, because like I hear that phone call and I hear like this is somebody who's had the same conversation a bunch of times and is desperate for her friend to break up with her shitty boyfriend. Because like I know that this friend is unnamed, but like it sounds like they have had this conversation a lot, and her responses of like Danny's constantly like, I'm, like leaning on him, he's not leaning on me, and she says that like, no, you are being open and honest with him, and he is not reciprocating that. I thought was very interesting as a response.
Well, I mean, I've had that conversation with people before where it's like, for the love of Christ, I have told you so many times, this person is shitty, you should break up with them. Mm-hmm. And you can only be compassionate for so long with someone before it, like, it starts to break down for you. And then, like, the social interaction just is not healthy for either person. So I agree with both of you, honestly, that it sounds to me like a conversation that's happened quite a bit, but I think the advice that she's giving is legit. It's just Danny won't hear it.
And my read on this is that both of the phone calls that she has, the one with her boyfriend and the one with her friend, is someone telling her what to do. And what Danny needs is someone to listen to her. Mm-hmm. And that is a very different type of communication.
That's true.
Someone forcing their viewpoint on you is the sort of thing that a shitty anthropologist might do to a community.
Can we talk about the friend group a little bit? Because I've thought about this a lot. I think that I don't think Josh likes Christian or Mark, right? Like, I think he likes Pele, and I think he's interested in using Pele for like a starting point of his research. But like, especially, I don't think that he likes Christian or Mark particularly.
I agree with you. I think that this is part of the victimization. Well, not victimization, but this is part and parcel with what happens when you are in a PhD program for too long.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is. I mean, your PhD is
the real.
Go ahead, David.
No, the real villain is academia. The Hårga did nothing wrong. It's all academia. It's all institutions of higher education. It is the ivory towers that are the evil in this film.
Well, I disagree with that, but I do think that being in a PhD program, for as long as it sounds like these people have been, that is your life, and so you don't have a social life outside of the people that you are having to see for your program constantly. And so I get why Josh would have to be around these people, because I think even in this scene, he's kind of like he's working, like he's at work.
Yeah.
While they're supposed to be hanging out.
Yeah, like he's got his notebook there, and like his comment to Christian of like, I think that you're using this drama to focus on this other thing that you're ignoring instead. To me, it seems like he sees Christian very clearly, and these are Pele's friends that he is also hanging out with instead of his own friend. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he does. There's this thing that you see a lot where in different types of media and potentially in real life, I'm not a man, I have no desire to be, but like where men see other men behaving not greatly, and then it's not affecting them, so it doesn't bother him. He just lets that keep happening, right? And up until the point where Christian being a shitty guy affects him directly, he is very okay with letting Christian continue. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense, or am I just like talking into like trying to untangle a brain void?
I don't know that Christian's sin is that he just hasn't broken up with her.
No, Christian has a lot of sins. My take on Christian is that he is the kind of guy who is desperate to never be the bad guy in any situation. So he will do whatever it takes to like seem like it's not his fault and just kind of like ooze around that way.
Not my read on Christian. I don't think that Christian is blameless, but I think that I don't think that Christian has these faults that we are ascribing to him. I think that he is water. He is shapeless. He is searching for what next to do in a way that is very thoughtless. And I don't ascribe it to this tactical and conniving mastermind. I think he truly is sort of just figuring out what's next in a very primal way. That is my read on Christian.
Well, let's talk about the next section because we're going to get a lot more material with Christian in a moment. So several months later, Danny is still struggling. She goes to a party with Christian and discovers that he's going to Sweden for a month and a half on her birthday, by the way, which he had not mentioned to her. She waits till they get home to discuss the trip, and by the end of the conversation, Danny is apologizing to Christian. The next day, while with his friends, Christian tells the gang that he has invited Danny along on the trip, and also they all need to act like it was their idea. Pele is genuinely delighted that she is going to be coming. Everyone else seems a little bit let down. Once they finally arrive, they have to wait to be let into the commune. While they're waiting, they run into Pele's best friend Ingmar and his two British friends, Simon and Connie, who just took some hallucinogens and they offer to share. Danny is initially hesitant, but joins in with everyone else. Unfortunately, she thinks about what happened with her family after someone mentions the word family, and then has a pretty bad trip. David, I want to talk about your read on Christian versus mine, which I think Christian, and we're really getting a lot of material for that, is kind of a miserable piece of shit, and I hate him. Like, he seems like the type of guy who replies to Elon tweets and saying "masterful gambit, sir," and means it. I think he is completely ineffectual and uncreative. I think he's afraid of hard truths because he wants to be the good guy all the time, and he just doesn't want to deal with the repercussions of his actions, and he is willing to lie to make his life easier. I think he should drop anthropology and go into politics.
Baby, what trauma have you brought to session today? Because it's not in the text, Tyler. It's not in the text.
Yes, it absolutely is.
If you read him instead as rudderless, you get the exact same output. He has no next step. He is always living for the next step he will take. He has no path. He shouldn't be in a doctoral program. I agree with that, but he's probably in it because he was like, what the fuck do I do next? I guess I'll just keep going to school. Okay, I guess I'll just study this. He doesn't have a thesis while Josh is finishing his and Pele has finished his like big exams and is about to finish. Like, he is just without purpose. So I think that we are ascribing a lot of malice to his actions that are simply stupid. Like, he is maybe he would respond to an Elon tweet, but I think it's more likely that he just never opens his account.
But I think it's malicious stupidity. I think that's the thing. I think he is behaving in a way that is incredibly inappropriate and selfish because he was not taught how to get a handle on his life. So instead of actually trying to do something with his life, instead of, like saying, let me just co-opt my friend's thesis, which we will, run into later, or instead of breaking up with my girlfriend, even though that would make me happier, he's just like, well, I'm just going to let this happen. I'm going to keep letting things happen. And then that's it. And I think his rudderlessness is what causes him to behave in these really immature and stupid ways that showcase a lot of like cowardice, in my opinion. I think he is unwilling to engage with things with like any sort of intellectual rigor. Instead, he lets it all happen to him. And I think that is going to make him a shitty person.
And he gets his comeuppance for it. I think as long as I can get you on board with the fact that he's just on inertia, then I'm game, because that is Christian's end as well. And I think to ascribe him as being any sort of intelligent manipulator betrays the character that we actually have with Christian.
But I don't think he is an intelligent.
I agree with both of you. Like, yeah, like David, like, you're saying that we're ascribing these motivations onto Christian, and I'm sitting here like completely agreeing with you. I'm just coming at it from like a different direction, because like I see his actions as, again, like I said earlier, an ooze, and you said he was flowing like water. Right. I think that like the way that he truly does just wander around saying yes to whatever is like good for him in that moment, and then trying to like backwards update everybody else in the situation.
Yeah. So I guess where I really bumped was Tyler hating him, because I think I don't hate a bear for mauling me, because that's what a bear does. And that's Christian's thing. Yeah, Christian's gonna fuck you up if you're close to him, because that's sort of how he is.
But David, that sounds like victim blaming everything that Danny goes through.
Are you kidding me? No.
He's constantly gaslighting her and making her a shitty person. He forgets her birthday. He makes the choice to lie to her about this Swedish trip. Like, he is actively making that choice.
No. You're taking some trauma and you're putting it.
It's not trauma. It's literally what's happening in the text of the film.
He just decided to go, Tyler. You don't understand. Like,
no,
you think
he did it though.
He was just planning to go since the whole time, and he just never told her about it.
Since the prologue in the wintertime, when they're talking about going to Sweden for the summer, like that has been in the plans for at least 6 months.
And he
never told her.
That was not my read on it. That was not my read on it.
Well, I mean, that's fair. It's not your read on it, but it is our read on it. And I think that is like a legit reason to criticize him.
I mean, I will let the two of you hate Christian.
Yeah.
Okay. You can absolutely do it. But I'm telling you that, like, then Danny is a victim.
She is.
Okay. Then Danny's a victim.
Listen, I hate him because I hate that conversation where he turns, like, Danny, I feel like even if he did just that day decide to go, the fact that he never mentioned the potential of the trip to Danny, and then the way that he acts to her in that conversation is immediately bearable offense. Like, get him out of here. Hate that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, do you think Christian was mad at Danny?
No, I think Danny was mad at Christian.
And then Christian turned it back on her. Because he was like, oh, you're being ridiculous. I'm going to go. I'm just going to leave. And then Danny was like, no. Stay. Let's talk about it. And then he's like, I feel like you're attacking me. And she's like, okay, well, then I'm sorry. I'm sorry for doing that. Like, that is straight up gaslighting behavior.
Okay. All right.
Okay. That's fine.
I disagree. I disagree. I don't see the gaslighting there. I do truly believe that Danny was coming on really hot, and that the right thing for Christian to do would be to leave the situation. And then he was sort of talked into not doing that.
All right. I think I
love that, actually. Yeah. I love that we, like, sorry to listeners, this is our first big disagreement of, like, a thing on pod. And
ever.
This was great.
Yeah.
I will say that personally, I think that there was a really great bit of foreshadowing, like, even before this in the scene. Because if you pay attention to, like, that first scene in this new timeline, where Danny is laying down on the bed, that picture that she has over her bed is, and I'm so sorry to everyone in Sweden, this is going to be very bad. It's called Stackars il Basse, I think. It's by very famous Swedish illustrator John Bayer or Bauer. It is of a girl kissing a bear on the snout. And, like, that's not a detail that you notice, like, just in the moment, but when you think about it, it was like, oh shit, the girl and the bear. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, and I really like the Coachella-esque vibes that we have when we're first coming into Hårga, with the, like, oh yeah, we're gonna do drugs and we're all gonna hang out in the field and we're gonna look and we're gonna be all just a part of nature and we're all one and we're all part of, like, this same cycle. And it's like, that is such, like, Coachella vibes, like boho lifestyle. And when this movie came out, I think we were, like, still in that era of, like, yeah, party, festivals, whatever, and you know, white girls on Instagram wearing Native American headdresses. Like, that was all part of what was going on during the time when this came out. COVID put a big quash on the whole festival circuit thing.
Mm.
But it does
It'll be
make us and the characters kind of think like, oh my god, these people are so quaint, how cute, and then the horrors, slowly start to begin.
The horrors. You could just stop there.
I like one in particular because Pele tells us this is all the young people from his village have sort of gathered around, and this is where we meet Ingmar. And there's language that comes out of Ingmar's mouth towards Pele that seems almost violent or accusatory, and it's not until the end of the film that we can sort of surmise, like, oh, fuck you, man, you brought 4, I only brought 2, is kind of what Ingmar is communicating just then in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, interesting. I didn't have that take. I love that.
I do too.
Yeah. I also just want to point out, while we're talking about the drugs in this section, if you pay very close attention, Terry is very briefly behind Danny in the the bathroom when she goes there, when she's having her trip. And I think that was neat. If you pay attention during the drug scenes, you can frequently see her parents or Terry in the background.
It's so creepy. I love that they did that.
Unfortunately, too subtle to make me scared. That's the problem, is that it was more like, did I see that, rather than and effective in making me question reality, but not effective in scaring me. I don't know if either of you got scared by the reflection or.
I mean, the only part that actually scared me was something that happens a little later in the movie with Connie, but
okay.
It's unnerving. I think this movie does a really great job of creating an unsettling atmosphere, but it doesn't scare me in the way that Psycho would scare me, or any of the other really scary movies like The Babadook scared the shit out of me. But
I do think I do think in a paint by numbers horror script, something in the mirror that's not there is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And it was surprising to me to not be scared by this. And that just speaks to the otherworldliness of this experience, this film, of this act in particular.
It's a very surreal film. A lot because of the drugs, and we're just in a place that doesn't seem real. So I really love it. Honestly, I really love this whole conversation we're having about the movie, because it's just, I think it's such a interesting, complex movie that can be viewed from so many angles, that it creates so much interesting stuff for us to analyze. But we simply must move on to the rest of the movie. So Marilee, please take us away.
The next day, it's finally time to head into the village itself. They hike up through the forest, and this is where they have their big discussion on ticks and Lyme disease before they arrive. Everything seems beautiful, and Pele introduces the group to several people before an elder addresses the entire village and leads a toast. The festival has begun! In a quiet moment, Pele gives Danny a drawing as a birthday gift, and Danny confesses that Christian forgot. On a tour of the grounds, they are shown a yellow temple building that they shouldn't go near, a bear in a cage, but that's no big deal, and a tapestry in that same illustration style from the beginning of the movie, only this time it's showing a young woman putting a man under a love spell by feeding him her menstrual blood and pubic hair, which then included a fun little screen, a meme image, which is, hey, that's a surprise tool that'll help us later with Mickey Mouse. And that is truly just for me to laugh at. I hope that you enjoy.
We kind of need that.
This whole sequence is foreshadowing shorter. I mean, when they get to the village, they ask where the children are going, and the elder says the children are going to play Skin the Fool, or maybe Pele says it.
I think it's Ingmar, actually.
Ingmar, great. But I do think it's important that skinning the fool is a game that children play, so it is part of the ritual of Midsommar.
Yeah, absolutely. This is also the first instance where they use diegetic music, which is music that is in the world and has a source during the actual world of the film. And I'm so obsessed with that choice. As soon as they walk into the village, we hear this weird music, and then the camera pans over, and if you aren't paying attention, you won't see the people on the flutes who are just doing that. I think that it's so fun. I love diegetic music. I'm obsessed.
We've talked so much about this movie as being really very, very serious, but there's honestly some really funny moments in this movie. Seeing the Hårga people just playing the flute in the middle of the day. I don't know, it's just kind of funny to me. And then when Simon and Connie are shown the bear, and Simon's just like, what's the deal with the bear? And then the other guy is just like, it's a bear in a cage. What do you want?
Yeah.
It's a bear.
Yeah, it's a bear. The music is giving like Renaissance fair realness, and I do enjoy
Oh my
that.
God, it
Yeah.
totally is. It is.
It's such a, oh man. I think the really long tapestry is kind of like the movie in small, because it
Mhm.
starts off kind of like cutesy, and then it becomes like, what the fuck, and then it becomes kind of like, what the fuck by the end of it, because it shows like the whole thing with the menstrual blood,
Yeah.
the pubic hair, and then they're pregnant, and he's like hypnotized and all this other stuff, and it's just like,
Yeah, like the hypnotized eyes that he has in that tapestry it's like wild imagery.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Well, and I also think the directorial decision to play this from right to left fucks with the way that we normally think about how stories progress. And so again, the idea that things don't get told from left to right the way that we are used to, the way that our perspective would typically demand to, things are different here. And so that feels unsettling. That feels unnerving.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a woman taking scissors to her pubic area, I was delighted that it was just pubic hair. I truly believed that I was going to see, I was worried about some sort of female circumcision thing at this point in time in the film, and was so happy about the outcome because it was not that, because that would have been horrendous to me.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of an interesting point too, is that there does seem to be a more of an emphasis on like matriarchy in this movie. Like there is like a woman that wears like the red cap that seems to be like the real leader of the Hårga people.
I think that there are two leaders. I think that there's like a man and a woman leader who have like different spheres, which again is like another interesting thing. Hold on, I have her name written down. Let me find it. We're talking about Siv is her name, like the female leader, and like she has a name, whereas the male leader, I've never bothered to get his name because he is unimportant, I don't think.
And what's kind of interesting too when you think about it is that Siv seems to be the one that's more active in getting all the rituals to happen. And she's like there in the background looking kind of like malicious the way Ari Aster depicts her, but the male leader is just kind of there to like do the toast and just be like, oh, I have an announcement for everyone. It's an interesting reversal, because I'm going to go back to like my medieval literature here, but like typically like the woman would be the one to do what the man is doing, which is like, let's do the toast, let's do the celebration, let us initiate what we're here to do. But the man is the one who's actually going to like start the ritual, perform the ritual, get everyone to come together and focus on like, we're doing this thing. And instead it's flipped. So the man in this case is the one who's doing more of like the feminine kind of thing. And that may as well just be all the way back to like the Norse practices that they were doing. I know in like around Viking cultures, women were also seen to be more aligned with like the magical elements to what they would do for rituals. Like there was a woman called like the Sifkona who would be the person to throw dice, and then they would read the bones and so on and so forth. Just like the witches, more or less. And I think we see that here as well. So I think that's cool. There's a nice log line there. I kind of want to ask, like, do you guys think it's possible to queer fertility and reproduction?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think this is it, because I think that if a queer family wants to create a child, it doesn't typically happen through normal intercourse the way that it happens for a heteronormative or heterosexual family. And so I think that everything about how queer couples or queer families make children to be part of their lives is ritualistic. It might be like bullshit paperwork, but that's our version of this horror in our lives, is that kind of ritual. I actually think that ritualistic childbearing is more queer than it is heterosexual.
I would love to get your take on that. Yeah. I think that's
that
great.
is, I agree with David 100% there. Like that's
just because we have to do something that isn't just fuck our partner. people would often ask if Mike and I would have kids, and I'd said, well, we keep trying. Like, there's just no way that we can't accidentally do it. And for us, just because of who we are, if it couldn't happen by accident, it's not going to happen because we aren't going to go through this ritual. And I think something that a lot of heterosexuals don't understand is the way in which the creation of a child involving so much ritual on our act is so exhausting and so tiring and so subject to attack, that it becomes very, very hard. And it's why that ritual is important and valuable for anyone who wants to make that kind of family as a queer person or a queer family.
I love that. That's awesome. Great read.
So yeah, I think that if Mike and I were serious about having a kid, we would have a 16-panel right to left story about the things we need to do to make a kid. That feels very on brand for us.
Love that. Well, the next day, the whole community sits down to a highly ritualistic meal before the first big ceremony of the festival, the Atastupa. Josh knows what this is, but hasn't told anyone, so they are surprised when 2 people die by suicide in front of them by jumping off a cliff. 2 old people, I should add. Unfortunately, the second person doesn't die on impact, this man being the old man, and instead needs to be finished off with a giant hammer. Simon and Connie are understandably freaked out about this and demand to leave immediately. Danny also wants to leave. As she's packing her bags to go, Pelly finds her and begs her to stay. While his friends are anthropologists and would appreciate the festival, he was most excited for her to experience his home because she knows she doesn't feel held by her community and Christian. That night, a young girl we've seen a few times staring at Christian sneaks something under his bed.
So much to talk about here, but I want to start by demonstrating again that the woman who dies by suicide does it the way that the ritual demands it. She is, even in her last act, highly, highly competent, which is, again, the film is telling us a story that in this community and environment, there seems to be a through line of highly competent and capable women. The man who doesn't succeed at dying by suicide is severely injured, and then they have to go take a hammer to him. And I'm going to say this looked fantastic. I loved the leg being broken. I'm sure it was grotesque for someone who is bothered by that sort of thing, but I loved it. I was like, this makeup slaps. This looks incredible. The hammer to the head made a big impact on me, and just truly and honestly incredible.
David, is there a pun in there about the hammer making a big impact?
There truly is.
Oh, don't worry. I have a pun in just like 3 seconds.
Oh, no.
It's so funny. If you look, something about this, pardon the pun, really hits.
Yeah.
You're surrounded, Tyler. You can't get away.
I'm like Danny amongst the Hårga.
Yeah.
Just surrounded.
And
yeah.
I think earlier we were talking about the innocence of Simon and Connie, but I do need to point out that when the man is unsuccessful at dying by suicide, the entire Hårga community suffers as if they have just experienced the fall. In a symbiosis, almost a psychic connection with his pain, as a pain that they are all feeling. And this is where Simon and Connie do not read the room. And while Danny is also freaking out, she's keeping it to herself, and Simon and Connie are not. They are accusing these people of being monsters. They are accusing them of being bad people, and this is a significant transgression against this community.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really great read. Like, the Hårga do this throughout. Like, it comes up a lot more later in the film, but I think this is the first instance that we really see of it, where they will all vocalize what, like, if they see somebody doing, like, suffering or having some extreme emotion, everyone will follow suit and they will feel that emotion seemingly together. And I think that it's a really interesting thing that this community does. And like, to see it here initially, it's going to carry through the rest of the film. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, like, that shared grief in the community, I think, is something that everyone can relate to, because, I mean, I'll give you like an example. Like, after 9/11, you know, the whole American country was, the whole US was like locked together in grief. You know, that was the vibe at the time. And we see that here as well with just like there is a shared trauma. And I think that is something that they can communicate and is extremely healthy. I think in terms of like if we consider the Hårga to be a cult, I think it also helps maintain collectivism in the group. Everyone is thinking and experiencing the same things. So no one is kind of disrupting the status quo. You know, everyone is falling in line with what the belief system is. And so I think
Tyler,
that,
you said
go ahead.
You
David.
said grief, but I want to stop real quickly because I did not get grief out of this. My interpretation was that they were empathetically feeling the physical pain that this man was feeling.
Especially the way that they all stop as soon as like the hammer hits his head. Like they are like metaphorically, or if like there is a connection like psychically, literally feeling this man's broken leg with him.
I think I think it's kind of both in a way. Like I think that they are feeling his pain and that it's like a whole sympathetic like experience that they're all having, right? And like that, I think that's actually like a normal human thing. Like if someone is undergoing extreme trauma and pain, we feel sympathy towards that. I think
they just verbalize it in a different
yeah,
way
they're
than we
verbalizing
assume.
it and they're expressing it, and I think that's really interesting. But I think it's also like I do think it is grief because this man is dying in such a horrible way, and perhaps he did not do the ritual as was expected. Like you said, David, the woman did it perfectly, like chef's kiss. It was all done
and perfectly. Nobody reacted. No one reacted. Like, yep, this is normal.
But now here he is, and he's suffering, and they are experiencing that suffering. But I think they are also upset because something has gone wrong, and now they have to do the hammer and mallet whole situation. And maybe that is not supposed to be part of the ritual. Maybe that is supposed to be part of the ritual. We just don't.
I mean, they were ready for it. Like
they were ready for it, and that's
they had the hammer.
Like, does that mean that that's supposed to be part of the ritual? Like, maybe he is supposed to break his legs. It's just the mystery of the Hårga and this small window that Ari Aster gives us into their beliefs and practices. And on that,
can we talk about? Oh, no.
I was gonna say, like, on that note, like Aster has like such a great like eye for visuals because everything in this, as you were saying, David, is so good looking. Like the effects are wonderful, but I think also just the use of color here is fantastic. Because this cliffside is very washed out, like it's probably like limestone or something or alabaster, I don't know. But when that blood hits, it hits, and it's very, very visceral and visible, and looks fantastic. Especially because also the Hårga are all wearing like whites and light blues. So the blood sticks out even more. And so that really shakes us and like wakes us up to like, oh, things here are different. And to some people, this is wrong. And then to people like Josh, she's like just fascinated from an anthropological standpoint. And so, yeah, just it's so complex. It's very, very complex.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that. Like, I don't like gore that much. So the first time I watched it, I thought that this was horrific imagery. But like I've seen this movie a bunch of times during this week to like really prepare for this. And by the last time I was with David, I was really appreciating like the craftsmanship of the way that like not only the effects go off, but also like the way that they built this scene, because it's almost like the movie like lulls you into like this false sense of security. Like obviously the death of Danny's family is horrific, but like there's so much time in between when that happened and now. It's almost like you kind of forgot the movie is willing to go there, and baby, it is willing to remind you. It will go there. This is it. This is what the movie is, and it has been the whole time, but you forgot about it.
Yeah, and a murder-suicide is violence. But death by carbon monoxide poisoning is not jumping off a cliff. And I think
but like I think specifically the way that Terry like had a hose that she taped to her mouth. That was to me at least, that was a pretty shocking image.
Sure. Yeah. But what I'm saying is like it wasn't jumping off a cliff. Like that's the brilliance of putting a dark and slightly less immediately violent image against a light and extremely violent image is so making your brain do two things at once that I think just, again, unnerving is like the vocabulary word of the day, delivers on what this film does.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting too that, like, if we look at the Hårga belief system, the idea of senocide, like the seniors should kill themselves, really flies in the face of a lot of beliefs that the world has, especially like in the West, where we're always raised to like respect your elders, and we're supposed to take care of them as they get older. But of course, your mileage may vary on how consistent that is and what part of the world you're in, etc. But I think generally speaking, we're supposed to care for our elderly. And I think it's kind of interesting that the Hårga do not fit that typical mold. So much in their beliefs we've seen is based off of your physical self. Like, you can have sex, you can reproduce, you can provide for the community. And they're saying that when you are a senior, you cannot provide for the community in the way that you used to be able to. So
right,
kill yourself before you get too old,
Well, and Pele even brings us through this, but I read it as a joke the first time I watched, where Danny was like, what happens when you're 72? When you enter your, like, there's 4 phases of life. They're each 18 years. What happens when you get to 72? And he does this neck cutting motion. And I was like, oh, ha ha ha. And yet, here we are.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't a joke.
Yeah, I know, and that's that. Like, in that instance, I think it is supposed to be funny, and it's supposed to be like, "Oh, Pele, you're so silly."
Yeah, oh, Pele,
classic Pele. But yeah, no, they mean it quite literally. I kind of put this in the notes, and I was a little like silly when I said it, but like, is it queer to kill your elderly? Like, it's
my queer lived experience.
Except in the gay community, it's 30, not 72.
Yeah. or dead in gay years.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's queer to kill your elderly. In fact, I think that, like, the naturism of all this, the idea that there are seasons of life, actually feels very prescriptive and not queer. This one's a little bit harder for me to reconcile, the idea of like forced end of life termination. Because it does not allow for there to be change. You could only have this in a world that was technologically stable, because many of the technologies that we develop, the point of them is to increase longevity of life. And so it works for an insular community, for this to be part of their belief system. But like, the idea of like preserving grain, which is a technology that we have had for millennia, was there to prolong life. Like, this one's a little bit more difficult for me to reconcile as like, is it queer? Because I think queers are more about living in a new world than living in an old world.
Mm-hmm. But I
love that.
I think in a sense, like, the old becomes new in this movie, because
true. That's true.
Because like, we're taking ancient, quote, pagan beliefs and then applying them to our 21st century experience. And we're trying to reconcile, what does our Western American viewpoint say, and how do we confront the sudden old brought into the new? It makes things very messy. And I'm not saying it's like queer to kill your elderly, but I think it is kind of queer to say, like, we are not going along with what the heteronormative ideal is supposed to be, which is like the young are supposed to take care of the old. The children are supposed to take care of your parents when they're old enough. And so this divorces that. This is totally opposite of that. And in that sense, I do think it is queering things, but I think it also is like, when people get that old, it's not their minds that are being appreciated anymore. And that's another reason why we're supposed to respect the elderly, is because they're supposed to have wisdom of their life. And I think the Hårga do such an interesting job justifying this, because they're saying, like, this is an honor for them, because they are taking themselves out before they become too old and infirm and a problem for the community itself. And so I think they do kind of include, like, the intellect in that as well, because, like, as you get older, like, there are definite, like, declines. And the Hårga are saying, no, we're going to cut you out before it gets to that point, which in a sense is almost a mercy. And that's why I think the Hårga are so interesting, is that, and like, David, why we have like this whole like spicy conversation earlier is because there's so much in this movie that is just can be seen from so many different viewpoints, and I don't think any of them are correct. Like, I don't think any of them are like factually correct. I think everything in this movie is all based on interpretation, and I really enjoy that in this film.
Okay, speaking of interpretation,
tell me.
Can we talk a little bit more about the Hårga? Because, like, it says in your notes, Tyler, you made a point to saying that the ritual of Astaputa
Adastupa.
Thank you. It's not like a real actual practice that happened historically, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And like the thing that I keep thinking of throughout this movie is like, how old do you think the Hårga community actually is? Because it's clearly been around for at least a couple generations, but I don't know that I'm convinced that this is a community that's like pre-Christian in roots. I'm not convinced that like they clearly have like a lot of like traditional harvest and farming methods going on, but I think that they've been around since then. The thing that I keep thinking about in relation to the Hårga is, and this is such a stretch, but have you seen M. Night Shyamalan's The Village?
I did many, many years ago.
Because, like, the conceit of that film is we think that you're watching, like, this historical drama, but in actuality, this is a community that has intentionally walled itself off from the modern day and technology. So I wonder, like, how old do you feel like the Hårga are, and how much of this is kind of like a front to try and, like, justify this way of life and tie it in with supposed historical like societies?
It's difficult to say because I think, like I just said a little bit ago, like so much of this movie does not have clear concrete fact. I think it's interesting to point out that the children were watching Austin Powers, which is modern. I mean, it's like 20 years old by the time this came out, but still it is a modern intrusion into their way of life, and they don't seem to have a problem with that.
They also mentioned that they make money through like a water plant, like a hydro.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, like hydroelectric something, and they're
Yeah,
like selling like boho, like bohemian style things. Like I kind of interpret it as like crystals and shit.
Yeah,
Or,
they said something around, I think, like aromatherapy. So
Yeah.
like there's clearly a lot more that has been modernized that we are not seeing in this part of the community.
I want to say that like this community doesn't live here all year long. I think that this is kind of like a campground for them that they will come to for their high holidays. But I think like the majority of these people must have like a life going on. And I think we could kind of look at what Pele talks about when he's like, you're raised here, and then in your 20s and 30s you go off on pilgrimage, and then you come back with strangers from the outside world and everything else. So I really don't know. It's so hard to say because I really like the idea of like this is probably not old. I think maybe like a couple decades, but it's so interesting because I don't really have anything to support that except like they do have access to modern technology, like the creation of a hydroelectric plant or like selling like soaps and shit. Like they must have some connection to the outside world that betrays some of the pagan folk roots that they have. When we watch The Wicker Man, we'll see like a really good example of a community that is able to interweave the ancient with the modern. But in this, they go full into almost like cosplay of like ancient times. And we know that cannot be the total truth. But we are not presented with any information that would justify saying that's the case. And I think that, again, is kind of like part of what... Well, I take that back. We are given some evidence to support the idea that they're not like as ancient as they seem. But again, we only have 2.5 hours with this movie. We can't do like a whole study of the Hårga people. And I would love if we could talk to the people who came up with the Hårga as a group in the movie, but I just don't know.
David, what do you think?
I mean, my only add on this, I mean, I think Tyler's right on. The only other thing, but how much you can believe it or not, I suppose, is up to your interpretation of the film, is that Civ at the opening of the meal does say that their last Midsommar was 90 years ago.
Okay, but I don't believe that. I think that's 100% a lie. Either that or like, I don't know that that's the truth, Ellen. Because we see those pictures of all of the May Queens along the time. I think maybe she says like it's like 90 years since the last high feast. So like maybe this is a 9-day festival that they have every 90 years. But then like there's a smaller festival that they do the rest of the time. I simply don't know, and I don't know what to believe, but I will tell you that I don't think that they only do this 90 years, like every 90 years.
That was not my intent. It just was that they have been around for 90 years. That was my only goal in sharing that information.
I think we should also kind of keep in mind that time is very fluid in this movie. I don't think we can really, like, these are all very unreliable people that we're watching. Even Danny has some elements to her that we cannot fully pinpoint what is going on in her brain at all times. But I think the fact that time, we don't know what is night and what is day, and what is the division of days, and when do they sleep, and so on and so forth. I think that also extends to the history of the cult itself, or the group, whichever it is that you want to call it, because I think there's arguments for both. And I think that kind of plays into it. It's confusing intentionally. Like, if we are confused and if we feel uncertain, that amplifies fear. Because what is fear except not knowing what's going to happen? Like,
right.
So all of this stuff, it's so fascinating. I wish we could talk for like 6 hours about this movie, but I'm afraid we must move on.
We have to kill some people, Tyler, so bring on the deaths. The next day, Mark pees on the sacred tree, which the people of the Hårga believe is tied to their ancestors. This is a huge deal. Everyone's upset in the commune. Connie says goodbye to Danny because she and Simon are leaving as soon as someone can drive them back. And this is when an elder approaches and tells Connie that Simon has already left, which Connie does not believe, because why wouldn't he have taken her? They say something about there's only 2 seats in the truck, blah, blah, blah. Danny also thinks this is suspicious. She tries to talk to Christian about it, but he has got his thesis, gang. He is going to study the Hårga. Like, he is good to go. He has a new thing. A shiny object appeared. So Christian is on to the next thing. Josh, meanwhile, because he is doing his thesis on the Midsommar itself and the festivals that many Scandinavian and Germanic people made around the Midsommar, he's gathering information about the Hårga's sacred texts. He wants to take pictures, but that is absolutely forbidden in a rare turn to, like, very grumpy elder, whoever's the person guiding Josh through this experience. And this is where they hear a woman screaming in the distance. You probably don't need to worry about that. Meanwhile, Danny is invited to join a dinner preparation with the other women of the tribe, and we see that same redhead who's been flirting with Christian making a very special pie. At the next meal, Christian's drink is a slightly different color. Thank you, Marilee, for that note. I did not notice that. Than everyone else's, and he discovers a hair in his meat tart. Mark is glared at by the elders before he is pulled away by the girl that he has flirted with before, and Connie and Simon are not at dinner. That night, Josh sneaks into the temple to take photos of the sacred textbooks. He gets interrupted by someone he thinks is Mark before he is struck on the head by someone wearing Mark's skinned face.
Oof. They did a really good job skinning.
Properly night. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, like, they did a really good job skinning Mark's face because, like, wow.
Yeah. That is such a like an intense visual, especially because this is one of the very few scenes in the movie that takes place at night, like actually properly dark. The actor who is playing Josh was the same guy who played Chidi in The Good Place, and so mentally the whole time I kept calling him Chidi because he and the other white guy have the white like they have the basic names, and I constantly, like before I sent these notes over, I went through and I made sure every time I said Josh and Mark I was talking about the right people, because I constantly got those two names mixed up, but I just kept calling him Chidi mentally. So this was when Chidi dies, I was like, bye Chidi, loved you, later. But yeah, like the visual of Mark's face, wild, horrific, loved it.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, David.
I mean, this is the thing, is like everyone who dies did something to transgress against this community, truly and honestly.
Yep. And that is also a part of folk horror. There is some sort of transgression that occurs. This one is pretty bad, what Mark did.
Yeah.
It also reminds me, like, how often white people just fuck up, like native people's beliefs, and like I said earlier, like the hipster girls that were wearing like Native American headdresses, but also people that are just doing all sorts of disrespectful things because they don't take it seriously.
Yes.
If this were not an all-white group of people, I think we would be having a different, like, we'd probably have more of an inflamed reaction to what Mark did. He fucked up. He fucked up pretty bad. I think everyone does a little fucky-wucky in this sequence.
Less so with Simon and Connie, but like Mark and Josh, unrepentant in their transgressions, no less.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark perhaps the worst.
Yeah.
Because he's like, yeah, I pissed on that tree. Like, where am I supposed to piss? I piss places. I'm a pisser. Piss, 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 piss. I was like, you've got to kill this guy. Like, you have to kill him.
Dead.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was like, you pee on a sacred tree and you're like, oh my God, I fucked up. I'm so sorry. Would have been such a different vibe than what we got, which is this like 19-year-old taking a vape pen and being like, yeah, I pissed on your sacred tree. Like, that was the vibe we were getting.
Yeah, he says at one point, like, so what? And the elder, who is like the one who discovered this, who is like having this huge emotional reaction, like screams, so what? He says. And like, it is such a different vibe. I just want to, Josh is deeply transgressing here by like breaking into the temple to take pictures, right? I think it's very interesting that he asked the elder, like, can I take a picture? In the same way that he has been asking Pele, can I take a picture the whole time? And every time Pele is like, discreetly, you could take a picture, which leads me to believe that he was never supposed to be taking pictures. This is yet another instance where Pele is like saying the thing that will get them to go along with their potential, like he was planning on having them be killed the whole time. Kind of vibe, you know what I mean?
That's cool. I had not picked up on that. I like that idea.
Because like the elder is so offended at the idea that he could wants to take pictures of this book, and I wonder if he knows how many pictures that Josh already has.
So many. Yeah, no, that I think that's a great pool. I think that's really interesting. I think the scene with Connie being told the priest's name is Father Odd or Od.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Again, never mattered enough to me to find
out. I
Thank
had the
you.
captions on, so it would say like Father Od, speaking.
Father Od. Father, may I borrow some odes?
Odes. Please, brother, may I have some odes? Connie being told about Simon leaving and Father Ode just doing such a terrible job lying about it.
Oh my God, the worst liar.
Not a skill.
But
not
Connie
a skill
can't
set,
do
not a
anything
skill
about
set.
it. That was the only scene where I was like legit scared. Because it's like, what the fuck can she do? They have, like, clearly someone is lying to her, and there's nothing she could do about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I walk back, I guess, is the only thing you can do. Like, we are led to believe this is like the middle of BFE nowhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've now, because of both of you, have seen enough horror films that I'm like, well, deuces, I've got hiking shoes. I will figure it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that another thing, like, that Dani does in this section that's so smart is she's like constantly talking to people and being like, hey, this happened. What the fuck? And like she asks when she's invited into make the meat pie, she's like, hey, did you guys see Simon? And like the lie is immediately corroborated in such a much better way by like that one girl, again, whose name I have no idea.
I think she was just a random villager number 3.
Well, no, I'm 98% sure that she is the one that like Danny is like later dancing with and like has that connection to like in that later scene. So I feel like we were introduced to her earlier. It's just there's so many very Swedish names introduced all in a row, and I simply cannot. My brain can't hold those.
Yeah, that is true.
But yeah, like she's like, hey, this happened, and she's like, oh, he didn't say goodbye? That's strange. And like later at dinner when she's like, hey, where's Connie? Somebody else is like kind of butts in and is like, oh, hey, I have information, and also gives that better lie to corroborate. So like she is testing the community and be like, I don't know that something is right here, but everybody else kind of gives a like holds better to the stress test.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this actually was support of my thesis, merely, that there is a type of communalism that exceeds normal social operating, that these folks are almost cognitively and cyclically linked to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So Father Ode's bad lie turns into a better lie, turns into the perfect lie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like the entire Hårgan community is speaking as an organism rather than the individual parts of that organism.
I agree with that. Yeah. I love that.
So good.
And then the pain from earlier, the pain we'll see later that they experience together. This is, again, has to be magical, because even in cults where there is psychological sort of manipulation to have everyone sort of assign themselves in a communalism, this is too far. This is supernatural.
Yeah, because it's just like, I'm watching it and I'm not thinking that it's supernatural in nature. I'm thinking that everyone is just like one organism because they have bought into their beliefs so perfectly, like from birth. And so if someone is just like, hey, that lie was terrible, they didn't buy it, you need to come up with a better one, and then that spreads to the next person, that spreads to the next person, that spreads to the next person, kind of like playing a game of telephone, but without any of the misunderstandings, because everyone is just so locked into each other.
Yeah, so, I wouldn't even say it's telephone. It's yes and extreme edition.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Hårga would make a great improv group. I just think that they should consider that as part of their cultural export.
Well, maybe that's what they do the rest of the year.
That's how they fill the coffers, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, do you think that the children were the one who skinned Mark because they were playing Skin the Fool earlier?
Oh, how horrible. But yes, that makes sense to me now that you say that.
I hadn't considered. I figured that he was killed by the elder who hates him. Well, actually, wait, hold on. This is another thing. Like I was scrolling through Tumblr earlier. I will try and like find the post to link it. But I saw somebody talking about like Mark's death specifically in relation to that girl that he had kind of been flirting with, the one who pulls him away. Because somebody pointed out that like in the like final parts of the film, during like the big end of the celebration, if you look and find her in the crowd, she has like a red horn coming from the front of her dress in a very phallic way. And so like the theory is that when they were skinning him, they grabbed his reproductive organs, and she was still able like Maya is the one who was picked out to breed with Christian. This nameless girl was going to be Mark's pregnancy partner, I guess. And they still managed to like do that reproductive without him, being present, because he's been murdered and skinned. You know what I mean? And I thought that was a really fun and interesting theory.
Oh my. Well, that's horrifying. I don't like thinking about that.
You're welcome.
And don't pee on a sacred tree, Tyler.
Yeah, don't pee on a sacred tree.
You will not.
Especially because like the offending object for his transgression was still his penis. So like, I don't know. I just I think that's all interesting.
I think it's fascinating. This is actually an excellent segue, because I wanted to talk about sexual taboos in this movie and how they're completely flaunted. Don't you think that flaunting sexual taboos is extremely queer?
It's pretty queer.
That's
extremely
queer. And
it's pretty queer.
I love that they do that. I think we should replace the statement of fly in the ointment with pubic hair in the pie.
Pubic hair in the pie. Just put it in there. And who doesn't like the pubic hair in the pie, Mark, and Mark are going to die.
Yep.
So both Mark and Josh are disgusted by it. And Christian instantly just seems like not to be bothered by it. Perhaps he is already under the spell.
But I mean, also,
But
like...
he slept on top of the rune already. She had the flowers. Like another part of the process was she walks backwards and collects the flowers and then sleeps with them under her pillow, dreaming about her man, like one night. So like the process has started, I suppose, depending on how legit you think this magic is.
Yeah. And I mean, like, even Danny is just like, weren't you freaked out by like the Adashtupa happening? He's like, wow, yeah, that was crazy. Anyway, I have my idea for a thesis. Like, he's just water off a duck's back.
On to the next thing.
This
Yeah.
guy.
On to the next thing.
He's moving through water, like David said.
It's just slithering about. That's all he does. He's just, the gravity moves Christian. That is his motivator.
But see, I think he slithers about like a snake, because he does also just tell Josh, like, hey, I know you were going to write about Hårga, but actually I'm going to write about Hårga. I'm open for you collaborating with me. And also, like, the way he frames that sentence.
Oh my God, the way that he can we talk about this, because like in like the way that it happens, it seems like Josh is like planning on switching his thesis to not be Midsommar, like Midsummer festivals in general, but specifically on the Hårga. And like Mark, like Christian comes up and be like, hey, also doing it on the Hårga. I've already talked to everybody else about it. There's nothing you can do. And like Josh says, he calls him like intellectually lazy and uninterested. Like this actually matters to him, but it doesn't to, like what a severe takedown. I thought that was all really.
Oh yeah. He read the house down thing boots, you can say. Like with that one.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And I mean, like a read, like a drag read, like it is a read from Josh to Christian to be like, you are intellectually lazy. That is devastating in academia. Like you can be a bad academic, but being intellectually lazy, that is a sin beyond all sins in academia. And Christian doesn't care because he is only motivated by just inertia.
Yeah, no, like he this is in front of him and he wants to talk about it. And then the way, and like he is so okay, and by so okay, I think he was like planning on the fact that there's no way that Pele wouldn't like have a condition of talking about the Hårga be that they have to co-author the thesis together. And so like he is getting Josh on his side to do lots of work that Josh does not want to have to provide for Christian. And like devious, devastating, hate him. I thought, like, you know what I mean?
I think, Marilee, to your point earlier about the white supremacy in this movie, I think Christian is an overconfident white man, which maybe that's part of the reason why I hate him so much, is just an overconfident white man that shouldn't be as confident as he is. But I think the fact that he is essentially stealing an idea from Josh, who is black, is a very fucked up racial thing to do, and for Christian to just be like, yeah, this is fine, I'm okay with you joining me on this thing, as if it was his idea all along, does again point to Christian being I think a bad person, which
he's a slug,
like a snake. And I think it's I would love to again, read more about this racial issue going on in the movie. So hopefully, like, I can find something, or we can read something that people send to us, Blue Sky, email, whatever. Just because, again, we're a bunch of white people, we don't have like the same lived experiences that people of color might. But I actually want to go back to the whole thing about sexual taboos being queer, because I got distracted from that, but I think...
sorry, we have so much to talk about with this film.
Again, I wish this could be 6 hours long, but we gotta keep moving. But I think it's so interesting that they have taken something that's very queer and are using it for the purposes of like hetero reproduction. I think is really fascinating. I think that the Hårga are very queer in terms of a social construct. I think in practice that may be more up for debate. But yeah, I think it's interesting. It's just anything that is going to cause people to be unnerved that are not buying into this. And
Mhm.
I like that. I really love that about the Hårga.
So the next morning, Danny is worried about Josh and Mark's disappearance. But Christian really isn't concerned about this at all until the elders stand up and announce that someone had stolen their sacred text. Worried about losing his opportunity to study the Hårga, he distanced himself from them as much as possible. He's like, they're not even my friends. Wild take, my man. Christian is sent to talk to Siv, that female elder we talked about earlier. And she explains in this meeting that Maya, that young redhead, wants to mate with him. They are perfect astrological matches, apparently. Danny joins the other young women at the maypole dance ceremony, drinking a special tea before it begins. During the dance, Danny feels connected to the other dancers and feels like she can communicate with them through the dance. Eventually, she wins and she is crowned the May Queen. In the crowd, as the Hårga congratulate her, Danny sees her parents. After dinner, Danny and Christian are separated yet again, with Danny sent to bless the crops and livestock as the new May Queen, and Christian to participate in the fertility ceremony.
Lots to talk about here, but let's start at the beginning of the scene with Christian sort of being like, they're not my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the deal. True story. They are not his friends.
It's true.
That is true.
No group of friends has not been friends since we talked about the thing on the mountain. I can't remember its name. Until Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Like no group of friends has betrayed the idea of friendship so much since Until Dawn. I truly and honestly was like, yeah, they aren't your friends. Like you don't seem to have any friends because you are just this listless thing that just keeps going. And right now it does you well to distance yourself from them. In the end, nothing really comes of the absence of the sacred text. I think that it's all...
It's a lie. It's a lie to excuse, like...
their absence. Their, like, absence, yeah.
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 And I liked that as a way to do this. And then I do also like Christian thinking that he's in trouble, and then he is. He's in trouble to mate. I liked how it was like going to see the principal, but then the principal was like, you gotta fuck. It was just a wild experience with him and Siv in this really beautifully designed set piece of a house with these beautiful murals on the wall.
Including a bear that he looks at the beginning of that scene where he's in the house. Again, love that foreshadowing.
It's just a bear, Marilee. It's just a bear. I don't know what to tell you.
Sometimes
You're
a
right.
bear
You know
is
what?
just
I'm
a bear.
making... It's just a bear. It's not a big deal. I do also want to point out that Christian is also gently pressured into drinking that tea like Danny was in the beginning of the movie, because we love parallels.
I think, I think that scene in particular might be the only scene where Christian actually says, like, no to something. Because David is right that he just kind of is like, I'm like water, I'm going to go through this, I'm going to let these things happen to me. I'm not going to make an active decision. Like, I think he says no to that, but I think the only other active decision he really makes is, like, I'm going to do my thesis on the Hårga. Like, that's really about it. He is, like, very ineffectual.
But even that felt so, like, because I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here's the deal. I think that who's the shitty kid who died? Mark. I think if Mark had been bitten by a tick, there's a non-zero chance that Christian's thesis would have been on ticks.
Yeah.
Like, truly and honestly, that is, I agree with Josh. He is intellectually lazy. He is not curious. He will take whatever is in front of him. But I do think you're right, Tyler. Him saying no to the tea was an act that was not flow. And it is as he watches Danny in her flow that he realizes he cannot be with her and suddenly is snapped into this decisive moment, because it seems like he's really afraid of everything that's happening. And that's where his no seems to come from, is a place of fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I totally agree with that. I want to talk about Danny's flow, since you bring it up, David. I think the maple scene is so good. I think it's probably my favorite scene. It's just done so well, and we spiral much like the dancers do into madness, thanks to the hallucinogens. I think Danny is being gaslit into being told, like, oh yeah, this is just a tea, it's fine, this is just gonna be a chill time. And I think Danny also kind of is the David, you asked me earlier if I think Danny is the victim, and I think she is because a lot of things happen to her, and she just kind of like allows it to happen because she has not learned to say no yet. And thanks to the people at Hårga, she does build up and become more confident. It's just, oh boy, what a horrible way for it to happen. Like, I don't think being given hallucinogens without being told they're hallucinogens is a good thing.
It's interesting though, because I think that because Danny hallucinates, we are meant to believe that these are hallucinogens, but I'm not entirely sure that they are. And that's because of my mysticism argument. Mm-hmm. I believe that the actual reason that Danny is hallucinating and having this experience is that she is now becoming one with the organism that is the Hårga community. And that is the impact that we see on POV, because everyone drank the tea and it doesn't seem like anyone else is tripping.
Well,
the way that Danny is. Well, okay, they're literally tripping. Calm down.
Well, I mean, even so, like, I think everyone seems pretty fucked up.
But like, the maypole is like, of all the things that are in this film that are manufactured, that are made out of thin air, the idea of dancing around a maypole is that one's concrete. That comes from history, Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's not up for disagreement. I know that's like, for sure a thing, but it's the fact that they're being given hallucinogens, which actually leads me into a point that I wanted to make. Midsommar and the Vikings TV show, I think, really made people believe that Scandinavians and Vikings were all fucked up on hallucinogens for most of that time period. There's not really that much evidence to support the argument. I think it's something that, as you said, David, like there was a period in the 2010s when everyone was getting really into Vikings. They were also like, well, the Vikings were also getting fucked up because that's like how you get a berserker, is that you feed them a whole bunch of hallucinogens and then they go fucking nuts. And that's really, there's not much evidence to support that. There's like some, but it's kind of in the same way that people thought that shield maidens were like as popular as like male Vikings were. It's just, there is some evidence, but it's not enough evidence to support the idea that this is a very common practice. And so I think adding these hallucinogens is something, I think they're hallucinogens anyway, is something that is done to justify everyone's willingness to go with what's happening. And it also amplifies the stakes because we are seeing things through the perspective of our characters who are under the influence of something, either hallucinogens or magic hallucinogens, which is why we see things like Danny's sister's face is in the trees when she's being carried around on that platform. We also see that there's flowers that are breathing for her on her crown. There and everything's like kind of swirly and blurry and everything else. So it just makes everything extremely unsettling for us, and we cannot trust what we see because even our eyes are betraying us.
Right.
This is also the scene where we kind of hinted at the top of the podcast, where with the potential cannibalism, because as they are all coming towards the table, there is some suspiciously human adjacent meat that we see at the far end of the table, away from where Danny and Christian are going to end up seated. So I have to ask, do y'all think that they ate Mark or Josh? I did it again, sorry.
I was in like big question mark on this, because there is certainly like an interesting symbolism of Josh feeding the earth and Mark maybe feeding the people, but I just don't know that we had textual evidence for it. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of one of those situations that I thought was always on the cusp of cannibalism, mm-hmm. but I guess in order to think that it's cannibalism, I need to see a person like chopping somebody's flesh off their bone. I guess I just didn't get the proof.
Yeah, like again, I also don't think that it's cannibalism, but we brought it up, and I do think it's interesting to have the conversation about it.
I do think, I think you're absolutely on the money with this though, Marilee, and it's part of our whole conversation that we've been having, that the Hårga, everything portrayed in this movie does not have one concrete fact. We cannot trust what we see. We can't trust what we hear. I think there is some implication that there is human flesh on this table. I think there's also implication that maybe it's like pig. because I think I see like the shape of a pig's head. It's
mhm,
just
mhm.
so hard to make out because everything is shot in such a way that it's kind of blurry.
Right.
So
Right.
maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Who can say for sure? But isn't that unnerving that we can't find the truth?
It's almost worse. It's almost worse. It's almost
Yeah.
It
worse.
absolutely is worse. I totally am with you on that because like, and that's part of what makes this movie so uncomfortable to watch. Like it's just a bad vibes movie. It's just bad vibes the whole time. And yeah, it's creepy as hell, and I love that.
This is the scene where like Christian, my take on it was that he didn't want to take the hallucinogens because he would be on a different trip than everybody else because he would be taking it so much later. Like that's another thing from earlier in the movie. And so when he's at the table and he's like, hey, what's going on? The elder just like claps in his face and he looks like a kicked puppy when he says, why did you do that?
So funny.
I loved that.
Yeah,
because
he made
then
that really hard.
it also calls into the idea of hypnotism, and only weak-willed minds can be hypnotized, which is a long-standing trope around the idea of hypnotism.
Mhm.
that Christian is so without merit that he can just be clapped into a stupor. I loved that. I loved that so much. When I was sharing with both of you that I had finally watched this movie and sent you gifts, that was one of the ones I'd considered sending.
It's so funny because Ari Aster, I'm going to assume you've done hallucinogens because if someone did that to you while you're fucked up on something, that's like the meanest thing that someone can do. Or just be like, demons are real. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Oh, your face looks weird right now. Like,
you should think about them. Did you hear that?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, just incredible.
Yeah.
Don't be high
Incredible.
listening to this episode, gang.
Unless you're
I
like,
think always be high listening to us.
yeah. To be fair too, like I have gotten like stoned enough in the past where if I've looked like Christian, just like a sad puppy because it's like something made me upset.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is what I think is really sad for Christian is that he's sort of realizing he's in a horror movie in this moment, but he is like now incapable of helping himself, and soon will be like physically incapable of helping himself. But it is this moment of realizing that like he's not in a good place, and just the inability to leave that place.
I think that's kind of part of what also made me like do the reference to him like tweeting back at Elon and just complimenting Elon, is that he reminds me of a certain crop of straight white men that exist online that are without purpose. They're young, they don't know what to do with their lives. Everything in the world is so uncertain. He's looking for something to tell him like, oh yes, you should do this, or all the problems in your life are linked up to this. And I don't think he's of the variety where it's like all of my problems are because of like women or something like that. But instead, I think he is just lost and he doesn't know what to do. He's in a topsy-turvy sort of world. And then now he sees how good he really had it when he is in a world that truly is topsy-turvy.
Exactly.
So
What a great take.
I love that we got into it earlier, honestly, because I think he's such an interesting character. And like really everything in this movie I think is really fascinating. But anyway, we simply must move on to the next section of the movie. So Christian is having a bad high, and the ceremony isn't what he thought he would be. He is currently having sex with Maya, surrounded by people, all naked women, standing around Maya, sitting together, vocalizing Maya's cries. A woman actually comes up close to Christian's face, and it's just like a whole thing, and he's looking terrified.
Like she's very like she grabs Maya's hand and is like singing directly to Maya right up in his business. I think that like the bigger what the fuck is like there's a lady who comes up behind Christian like towards the end and is like pushing his butt to try and like get him in there harder. And then at the end, like right when he freaks out, it's because she smiles and like this elderly naked woman who is just touching his butt has no teeth, and he like freaks out about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they're one organism. They are one people having sex with Christian. And I almost read this as more it was intimacy between Maya and the person who grabbed her hand rather than any interest in Christian, because they're just getting what they need from him.
He is treated like that
physical.
too. Yeah, he is treated like that too. Like he's just there to provide the seed, and that's what's really important, is the seed and then the continued progeny of the Hårga people. I love that you phrased it that way, David, because there was something about this that made me actually feel less uncomfortable, because seeing the woman comforting Maya was so, like, kind of reassuring in a way. Like, it was almost beautiful. Like, it reminded me of, like, women, like one woman holding another woman's hand while she's giving birth. And
Sure.
there is, like, a sense of, like, sisterhood and solidarity there.
But none for Christian.
But not for Christian. Christian is just meat. He's to be a bear.
No, he's the subject of a sexual assault. I mean, that is
Oh,
what's
that is
happening in this
absolutely
scene.
the case as well. Like, this is very much sexual assault that's happening right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just, like I said a minute ago, bad vibes, the movie. Danny and the other girls arrive back while the ceremony is in full progress. Danny looks through a keyhole and sees Christian inside having sex and has a panic attack. The girls bring her into the sleeping barn and crowd all around her. They start mirroring her vocalization and screaming with her, which is what most people online have now seen, because it's become a very popular meme. So after completing the ceremony, Christian flees naked from the temple. While trying to find some place to go, he sees a human leg belonging to Josh sticking up out of the ground in a garden patch, which I thought was kind of funny.
Kinda funny.
It's so funny. Inside the chicken coop, he discovers Simon, who his body has been hung up from the ceiling, back flayed open, and his lungs pulled out of the opening. In a blood eagle is what that's called. To make it extra horrifying, in Christian's altered state, he sees Simon's lungs breathing. When Christian turns back around, he is no longer alone, as an elder blows dust in Christian's face and completely paralyzes him.
Wow. Just wow. Can we start with the screaming, the Danny screaming?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's horrific. It is, like, hard to watch, but it is, to me, was sort of the thesis point of the film, that Danny is now part of this organism, and the pain she feels, which is foreign to the Hårga. They wouldn't feel pain over somebody cheating on somebody. This is something she's bringing into this community. They all feel with her. And it is the first time in this film that somebody has felt something with Danny rather than feeling it for her or telling her what to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, David. I think that is the absolute correct read. I think it's up to us as the audience to think, is this a good thing that it's happening for Danny, or is this a bad thing that's happening for Danny? Because Marilee, you bring this up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, like,
so,
this
like,
scene?
my read on this scene is, like, I know that the cult is, like, love bombing her hard and has been for a while to, like, try and get her into, like, a positive state around the Hårga to get them to her to join them. But, like, I look at this scene and I think, honestly, that looks like a good time. I would love to be able to, like, scream with a bunch of my homies, you know?
I would also love to scream with my homies, but, like, homies, like, y'all. I would scream with y'all. But I would probably not scream with the homies who I see are doing all sorts of weird rituals that involve my boyfriend having sex with a woman.
Well, so, like, we don't know how wide the keyhole aperture was. We do not see what Danny sees. And, like, we hear Christian grunting, and we, like, presumably, if she looks in there, like, just, like, based on the eye line, she would be seeing a bare butt, like, doing obvious sex motions, because I think this is, like, right before, like, the other lady goes around and starts pushing, so, like, we don't know what exactly she sees. Presumably, like, she can hear the other women also vocalizing, but we don't know how she is, like, taking that in, you know what I mean? It could just be that she thinks that he is cheating on her, which is a thing that she's been worried about this whole time, because she's felt like Christian wanted to break up with her, and she does not feel held in that relationship.
And that's my read on it, is that she saw only that Christian was having sex with someone, and she was like, well, he's cheated on me. This is the culmination of all of my worst fears. And lo and behold, the women of Hårga are there to support her in that moment of extreme vulnerability, when the worst possible thing she could imagine has happened to her.
Yeah, and, like,
Right.
she is not in a space where she can think about things rationally, because if she did, she'd be like, obviously everybody besides her knew about that, right?
Mm.
And like this is like she hasn't seen any of the murders. She just saw like those two people who presumably died by suicide of their own volition, and then a bunch of people left, right? So like she doesn't really know all that much of the weird cult stuff. So then she sees this ritual that's potentially happening that we know is not 100% consensual. But she doesn't know that. Like so I feel a lot of grace for her in this moment, even though it does lead to some other things down the line that are not great for Danny.
Yeah.
Well, and what she sees through the keyhole might not matter if there is this deeper connection that Danny now has with the Hårga. Whatever then joy or feeling that they are all experiencing as part of the ritual, if some of that is getting into her, but she still has a relationship with Christian that is not just an object that provides a seed, then she's applying some of her individuality, and that's where the pain is coming from. And that, I think, it almost doesn't matter if she saw him or not. Getting close to the door gave her that link. That link then tells her what's going on. That causes her pain. That pain is felt by the other women who are the ones who caused the situation to happen. It's num 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 num. I love all of it.
Yes, it is like it's all they've all fallen into the web of manipulation by the Hårga people. Like they are all just doing what it is that the Hårga expected them to do. And I was thinking about it at like this point in the movie where it's just like, God, Danny has been screwed from the beginning because Pelle maybe found like the right combination of people who are like, they are just selfish enough or believable enough or gullible enough or lacking self-esteem or proper coping habits like Danny to become perfect victims for the Hårga, because the Hårga are there supporting her, which I'm very sympathetic towards Danny in this movie. I think she is a victim. I think people prey on her, and I feel really bad for her. And I think the whole reason she's able to then make her climactic decision in our next discussion point is because they have built her up into being much more self-confident, but they have built her up into the image of the Hårga, what a self-confident person is according to the Hårga, and not what is a self-confident person according to Danny.
Yeah, I would argue that Danny doesn't exist at the end of the film.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
But I think for a queer reading of this, there are plenty of people who, when they come out, find community and lose their individuality in seed of a communal identity for being queer. And that is a lot of how I read Danny's experience here. And that experience does feel intoxicating. It does feel painful when you reconcile your past self with the new version of yourself that you were trying on. Again, this felt like a very, very queer reading of Danny's experience here.
I agree. I think it is a very queer reading, and I think it also, I hadn't really thought about that, David, that it's kind of part of like, you become part of the like queer community, and some part of that.
Found family is pretty gay.
And
we were on the record.
And found families are very gay. Like we've talked about this quite a bit, and I think it's just kind of like the dark mirror of that. And I think that's,
well, it's a horror film.
Yeah, it's a horror movie, so of course it's going to be the dark mirror. But I think it's just like, in some sense, it is tragic in that way, and it is part of what makes it so unsettling, is that we can recognize those aspects of ourselves in the dark mirror of the Hårga people. It's so cool. Yeah. I really like this movie.
Hey, there's a leg sticking out of the ground. I don't know. Moment of levity for me, I guess. I'm not sure. It wasn't horrifying because I knew that Josh was dead. It was probably horrifying for Christian, but like a leg just sticking straight up out of the ground, pretty funny.
Yeah, like what are you doing there, Hårga? Like what is that supposed to like signify? Because like we see later, like the bodies of like even Simon, he's got like those flowers in his eyes, and he's been blood eagled. So, like, what exactly is Christian's leg supposed to... Like, is he been chopped up and put into a bunch of different vegetable beds? Is it just his leg is sticking out of this one bed? Or is, like, the whole body under there? What's what are we doing here? What are we doing?
It's supposed
It's got to be ritualistic, right? Like, it's got to be a ritual.
Yeah, like...
Right, yeah.
Like, if they cut off his leg and then the blood seeps down into the earth.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I like that.
Because that is part of one of Dani's rituals when she's going around with the women as the May Queen, she's like they're burying like a big piece of meat, an egg, and so on and so forth. Like it's all
Some
part
barley,
of
I think.
the blood of life is being given into the earth.
Exactly.
You know, from dust we begin and to dust we return. You know.
Yeah.
But I do think it's funny. I think it's just a funny image.
It is certainly an image.
I think Ari Aster's got like a sixth sense of humor, and we're just seeing that on display.
I will say that Professor Terry Barnes, who's the host of the Vikinology podcast, and also is on YouTube as Shield Maiden in the Kitchen, where she makes food but then relates it to Viking history. It's really wild to watch because the links to what she is making and the history she is telling you are tenuous at best, but that makes it more entertaining.
I love
this.
I love this.
Like she'll make a key lime pie and be like, none of these ingredients are available for Vikings, but like they had circles and a pie is circular. Incredible. No notes. She talked about the blood eagle on a couple of her podcasts and appearances that she's done. And while there is evidence that extreme torture and flaying was done for folks, nobody probably had their ribcage removed and had their lungs continue to inflate. So we can chalk this up to the hallucination that Christian is having and not the actual idea of that level of torture to happen on a living person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember I heard about a blood eagle like many years ago in like a completely different context that I don't even remember. And I remember Googling it, and there was some people who were saying that it was like just Christian propaganda, that probably nobody was ever, because like there are only 2 mentions of it by Christian missionaries who talked about it like happening to Christian royalty or whatever. So like that's one of the things that makes me suspicious of the Hårga's providence, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're taking this idea of a torture that probably wasn't real. It's like the Iron Maiden in a torture room, because that also wouldn't have happened.
It's so difficult to say because we do have to remember that the Hårga were created by non-Hårga people.
Yeah.
Like the Hårga don't exist in real life.
Yeah, we're talking about this fake community.
I know, but it's important. It's important. But I think like we have to kind of remember like, is that just like propaganda? Like what we learn growing up about Vikings or something, or is that a deliberate choice by the Hårga to like play up the horror of who they are?
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, sometime later, Christian is woken up for the final part of the Midsommar festivities. At the beginning, we were made to believe that this was a 9-day affair, so there is a little bit of a time skip here, because we've only watched a couple meals, which is really our only way of tracking time. Turns out they traditionally sacrifice 9 people, 4 outsiders and 4 Hårga, and the last offering is chosen between an outsider and one of the Hårga by the May Queen. Dani, who is dressed to the nines in a mound of flowers, chooses Christian as the last sacrifice. The Hårga bring the bodies of everyone they've killed so far to a special yellow temple, including Mark, who has been filled with straw and has a belled fool's hat on. Christian, still completely paralyzed, is sewn into the body of the bear we saw earlier and placed in the center of the temple. And then they are all burned, including 2 Hårga who are still alive when the ceremony starts.
One of whom is, of course, Pele's friend from the beginning, whose name even though we've already talked about him several times, have already left my memory. I think it's
Ingemar.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he's one of the 2 people.
Outside, the Hårga convulse and vocalize together. Dani screams, laughs, and watches the burning building, ending with a smile. And we go to credits.
Wow, that summer was so mid.
Oh my God, this was not mid. This was everything but mid. I think we were painting with the rainbow here.
Mm-hmm. A big fiery ritual where everyone is doomed. Sure, sounds like folk horror to me. I think Ymir the giant, who they mentioned once at the very start of the movie, is very pleased with their sacrifice.
Yeah, and it is the point of this ritual to keep the organistic connection going. Who's to say? But that the psychic connection continues to be relevant to me, at least, because they are all acting like they are getting burned while their countrymen burn. But Danny only reacts when something is happening to Christian at last. And that I took a lot of interest in, because the only relationship Christian would have would be with Danny.
I think it's also, to me, I read it as like, because Danny is like in misery, like screaming and crying and all that stuff, and then she laughs, but she kind of does like a look around before she does that final haunting smile and sees the people of Hårga all convulsing. And to me, I read that as like, you want to talk about psychic connection, but I think that is them also feeling all of the grief and misery that she experienced from her family dying, and now this is her family. And so she sees, I can share these emotions with people, and I have lost my mind, and now I'm going to smile serenely as my shitty boyfriend dies.
Yeah.
And now I'm the May Queen, and everything's great for me.
You know, if I had $1 for every May Queen / Bear couples costume I saw that the year this came out for Halloween, I would have at least $4, which isn't a ton, but it's not nothing either.
That is wild to me. That is I did not read the assignment and I picked my couple's costume.
Right? Like, insane that you would want to pretend that your relationship is this dynamic.
I mean, Christian looks great in the bear. I will not lie to you. Ideal man wearing a bear costume. Just truly and honestly.
Well, David, I know a couple people that wear bear costumes. I can set you up if you need.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. We're revisiting furry conversation from last week. Great. Sharks, yes. Bears, also yes. Here, but on the costume front, Marilee, I do have an interesting thing. A win for feminism. There was an auction of many of the costumes that came out of this, and the May Queen costume, which was made out of a series of tubes that interlinked together and took about an hour and 45 minutes to darn onto a pew, sold for $65,000 to an unknown buyer who immediately gave it to the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures. And they wished to remain anonymous, though Ariana Grande was on the record of saying that she wanted to be the one to purchase it, and she intended to make it that donation.
Aww.
Oh, interesting.
Whereas, meanwhile, the bear headdress went for a paltry $47.50. Yay, equality. No, superiority of women's costumes.
Yes.
Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I saw Danny in that flower outfit, I thought it was just like a staying there thing. So when I saw her like moving in it, I like gasped out loud in the theater. Like, that was the gag for me.
Wild.
Well, I think
just truly.
It is
incredible.
Also kind of like a visual metaphor for just like, it's not easy to move around in that thing at all. So they do essentially have her captive now, but she's captive in flowers as opposed to like chains and such. So it's a beautiful captivity. She's being celebrated, but she is, at the end of the day, still captive to the Hårga. And now she's forever a part of them. She's part of this organism that is the cult or group. Here's to feeling bad all the time, folks. That is a bummer of a movie.
Yeah, we watched this one as a household, and that was a mistake.
Oh, no.
This was not a Mike film, so whoops on that one.
Yeah, no, I asked Marshall if he wanted to see it, and he said, no, I'm good.
Yeah, that doesn't really seem like their thing, so
Nah.
I don't know, Tyler. I don't know about that.
My brother would have loved if I had asked him to watch this with me. Unfortunately, I was always doing it when he was busy, so can't relate.
Yeah. I rewatched it by myself to actually get ready for the conversation, which was a better choice. Because Mike would say things like, well, I saw that coming. Okay, great. How did you see anything coming in this movie? I had no idea what was going on most of the film.
What did he see coming?
Just that she was going to be part of the commune of the Hårga. Or that I think specifically that she won May Queen.
Yeah, okay, that was a little telegraphed, but that doesn't mean that like that's bad. It's good when stories tell you what's going to happen and then they follow through on it. That's like how watching stories works.
Yeah, it would be a little bit of a bummer if our main protagonist lost the thing.
I like driving on a road and it says there's a curve ahead and a curve actually shows up. If I was driving on a road and no curve showed up and there was a curve sign, I would freak out a little bit.
You would,
right?
Yeah. It's against the law.
We like
probably.
signs. You got to post them.
Post your signs. Well, before we wrap up, let's revisit the questions that brought us here together. First and foremost, was this horror?
I think after our conversation, it is somehow even more horror because it made me realize just how, like, not unsettling, but like unreliable everything in this movie is.
I think I also increased my assessment of this being horror now that we are here at the end of our conversation, because so much of our conversation revolved around this dark mirror, as Tyler labeled it, because I do think that you can only do that in this genre. Or I think it is easier to do in a horror genre than it is to do in other genres. And that is where I think a lot of the thesis of the film came from, was getting you to explore some of the ways in which you look at different cultures, getting to explore what it means to have community, find community, and be part of community, but in like the wickedest way possible for all of that.
I guess we also have to ask, was it queer?
I mean, yeah, I'd say so. I
think we talked, I mean, the subversion that is the folk of all of it does seem very queer, like Queer as Folk Horror Month, like just living its standards here. And I think this was a really good choice to kick us off here. Whichever the two of you forced me to watch this, the credit for that goes to you. I also think that I maintain that Danny's journey is about finding community. Does she find it in the most disgusting and terrible way possible? Yes. And yet that is a queer lived experience. And sometimes finding a community that does accept us for who we are actually puts us into a really, really terrible place as queer people. But it's better than not feeling heard from the terrible place we were in before. And so that was a queer reading for me, and I keep that.
Yeah, you should keep that because it's right. Like, that's a really great way to put it.
I agree. Yeah, I really like that idea. I think so much of this movie was queer. I think Danny's journey, hero's journey, essentially was a queer thing to do. I think I don't have the chart with me, but I think this kind of was a hero's journey for her. Like, she like, denies the call, she goes on the call, she deals with crises, etc. So good stuff. This is a really good movie to talk about. I don't know if it's a feel-good movie. I wouldn't pop this on.
No.
That's why, Marilyn, when you were saying like you got family that are like super into this movie, I am like, what? Or like Hereditary?
They love horror movies.
Oh.
They love Hereditary. Listen, my sister, my younger sister Annabelle, who occasionally will listen, so maybe she'll hear this shout out. Listen, Annabelle, I swear to fucking God, I will never let you recommend another movie to me ever again. You like bummers only, babe.
Annabelle, come on the podcast and recommend a movie.
No, so like
recommend us some bummers.
There's this documentary called like Dear Joshua, I think it's what it's called. And like she just put it on one day. Well, she like came over and was like, "Here, let's watch this. It's really good." It was the most depressing movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, there was a point of the movie where I'm like sobbing, like full on sobbing. The laptop is like in both of our laps, so I turn over and look at her and be like, "Hey, what the fuck?" Like, she is staring directly in my face like I'm an insect that she is studying. She's like eating my emotion. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
I think she's like, she would fit in well with the Hårga. She would be like, tragedy is just a part of life.
No, she loves it. She loves a bummer. She loves a bummer.
Yikes.
So, don't watch Dear Joshua.
Is it possible it's Dear Zachary?
That's the one.
Okay.
Again, I'm really bad at names.
No, you're totally fine. I just wasn't finding it, and I wanted to make sure that I could add this to my like movies for a sunny, happy day.
To ruin?
Please? I'm genuinely telling you, this is the worst movie I've ever seen in my life.
At least read the Wikipedia summary. Look up some content warnings.
Do not go into this movie knowing nothing about it. Just saying, hey, this is a really good documentary.
It's a bummer. Anyway, about this particular bummer, do we have any final thoughts for this episode? Is there anything that you wanted to point out or any other conversations we want to have before we let people get on with their beautiful day?
I mean, I do. I'm really glad that I watched this. I will not. HBO, let me know, or Max, fuck you. Let me know that this was leaving soon, and I was like, good riddance, because I don't need to see it again. I am happy to have watched it twice. I am genuinely glad I've seen it. It was part of the discourse, and I am glad that I have now filled that trove of knowledge for myself, and I never need to revisit it.
Until we do our retrospective.
Great. Well, I could be dead by then, I guess.
Do you feel differently about the movie now that we've talked about it? Because I know that you were not into it at the start.
I might bump it up another half star, and it's not. I do think that we didn't get into it because we were spending so much time talking about story. While there were some really great choices that Aster made, I think on a critical review, I think some of them were not. They didn't align with a lot of the theses that the story was trying to tell, and some of that was a sophomore effort. So if I watch Hereditary one day, maybe I'll see the progression of an artiste. But there were mistakes that just felt like big moment. Even as much as I loved it, the foot in the ground, like there were too many things that were discordant, which maybe what we were going for as an artist, but then it doesn't make a film experience overall. And especially a horror movie, I think you need to have sort of consistency from moment one, and it wasn't there. And so maybe this gets up to a 2-star watch for me, but no, I didn't improve my critical view from our conversation tremendously.
Yeah,
that's valid as hell. Thank you.
I think if folks aren't following our Letterboxd, definitely please do that, because we'll leave our final assessment of this movie on there. But yeah, I gave this like a 3.5. Originally I had 4 and I bumped it down a half a star, just because I agree with what you're saying, David. I think that there are just some choices that were made that were probably not the best choice. And Aster will improve with time. Because I think he is definitely got a masterful ability to create an amazing visual. I think that is wonderful. I think the scares and unsettlingness is very effective. That's why we did have such a powerful reaction to this movie. But I think there are issues like with characters. I think like Mark, for instance, is very one-dimensional. I think Josh is unfortunately also one-dimensional, even though we do get to dig in a little bit more before his demise into what kind of person he is. But the movie really is like Danny's show. And I think that's great. Right. That's why Florence Pugh got, no pun intended, but received her flowers for this. Like this was a huge deal for her. And yeah, I think I like Hereditary more, but Hereditary is also a very difficult watch. So we'll probably end up watching it at some point for the pod. So we'll just have to like bump up on, I don't know, Xanax or something for that. But I will also add, like, I think this movie pairs very well with The Wicker Man, which we will also be reviewing this month. Not reviewing, but analyzing this month. Well, some review. And this will be interesting to compare and contrast with. I think, this is a good month. I'm really excited for this month. Yeah,
this month slaps. We've got a really great lineup of programming. I also just want to say that like there has been a lot of discussion about whether or not like this movie even counts as folk horror. I think one reviewer called it like a breakup movie in folk horror's clothes.
That was Ari Aster, actually.
Oh, well, there you go. I read a lot of stuff, and sometimes it remains unattributed in my brain.
Fair.
But I think that this is a really great place to start, and I'm so glad we started our conversation here, because I think that like there's just so much meat on this bone, and maybe it's person, but we're gonna devour it anyway.
It felt folk horror to me, even though that conceit is new to me. Maybe one of the things we can ask at the end of the month, Tyler, is if I still think this is folk horror, or if it was just a rom-com in folk horror's clothes.
I love that.
Marilee, take us home.
I will take us home. You're home here now in the Hårga because you never will escape.
Fuck.
So thank you so much all for listening to this episode. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to feel held by us, you want to be held and feel held in this moment, and maybe like scream and make vocalizations together with your homies, you can find us together on Instagram and Blue Sky at FearCodedPod.
One organism working together sounds like a queer podcast collective. Well, of course, Fair Coded is part of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective. If you'd like to listen to more queer media podcasts, you can check out the full roster of shows at glitterjaw.com. And join us here next week as we continue our Queer as Folk Horror Month by getting a queer feeling while we play the 2022 adventure game, The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow. But for now, we will simply say goodbye.
Bye.